Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming to you from right here on my YouTube channel. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea. It's an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, my international friends, joining me as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies and movie news and all that sorts of good stuff. And back again for another triumphant week is the one and the only Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett, ladies and gentlemen. Robert, how you doing, sir?
John, I just am watching Disney make money hand over fist and wonder, why can't I do that?
It's got to be easy, right? I mean, there's got to be some kind of secret trick to it. It can't be that hard. It can't be that hard. Also joining us this week, I'll tell you why I'm laughing in a second. Also joining us this week is Miss Kris Carr. Kris, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I feel like you're laughing because I haven't figured out how to make all that money either.
No,
I don't know.
No, it's one of those things. You know what I'm getting a lot better at than I used to be is the whole engaging filter between mind and mouth. Because I try to segue, right? I try to segue a lot of things. So like, and Rob, and then I try to figure out to segue the verbiage I use to go over here. It's like, and what did we say? Something about being hard and something else about being rock hard. I can't remember. But anyway.
Where's your mind at this morning, John?
See, I don't plan my segues in advance. That's the thing. I make them up as I go on the spot, and sometimes they're gold and sometimes they're terrible. And then so I just why not confess to everybody what the blunders I almost make. Okay, anyway, guys, we got a whole bunch of stuff that we need to talk about here today. A lot of things, there are major topics that you guys sent in, but before we get to any of that, let's talk about this. One of the television shows that, you guys know I don't watch a ton of TV. I don't have time for a whole lot of TV, but one of the shows that I wasn't watching, but I constantly was hearing from you guys about just how good it is. And Robert Meyer Burnett started talking about it's the best sci-fi on television right now, is the show The Expanse. As many of you know, The Expanse is getting ready to launch season 4 on its new home at Amazon Prime. Well, the news just came out today that they have now officially renewed The Expanse for a 5th season before the 4th season has even aired. I mean, we've heard Amazon talk a lot about how much they appreciate this show, how much they love this show, and all this kind of stuff. And sure, of course, it's a new show on your network. Of course you're going to say that. But they have really backed it up here, Rob, by actually renewing it for yet another season before this one even airs. That tells me a couple things. One, they really do believe in the potential of this property. But number two, it probably tells me that they really like the 4th season that they've got. So I think this is great news. I love the fact that you guys turned me on to the show. Rob, you're also one of the people that turned me on to this show. Is it a little presumptuous of them to renew a season 5, or do you think this is just a really good bet?
No, I think it's a really good bet. I think that first of all, Amazon, of course, Jeff Bezos, who runs Amazon, is a huge real space fan. His company, Blue Origin, is pushing to go to the moon and to Mars itself. He bought the original model of the Enterprise refit from Star Trek The Motion Picture. It's in the lobby of Blue Origin. So he's a huge space fan. And to see a show like The Expanse, it's not just a great science fiction show, but I think it also makes the point of why we should reach out into our own solar system and the cosmos beyond. And I think it's as much a statement as to, it's almost a political statement that he's making. Let's keep the best science fiction show on TV because it has it has real science. You learn, I mean, they bend the rules, but in terms of, you have to know that a spaceship will decelerate for sometimes weeks, if not months, before it arrives to its destination. There's lots of stuff going on in The Expanse that makes it, in my mind, the best science fiction show out there, but I think that's why he wants to keep it going.
And more importantly than that even, it's just really good characters.
Yep.
Really good characters, interesting story. They weave a mystery into it as well, and they are able to put all those pieces together into a really satisfying, kind of holistic, if you will, kind of sci-fi viewing experience. And it kind of represents the best of what sci-fi can be. And I'm not saying I think it's the greatest sci-fi show of all time or anything like that, but it's a really good show.
It's also based on books. You know,
Yes.
there's 8 books in the series so far, and it's sort of following the books pretty closely, and it really knows where it's going. Like they might finish the show if they keep going before a book series is even done.
Well,
they'll do the reverse of
where
what Game
have we
of
seen
Thrones
that
did.
before? Yeah, sort of thing. Well, listen, guys. Question is, what do you think about them renewing The Expanse for a 5th season before the 4th one even starts? Do you think that this might be getting ahead of themselves a little bit? Do you think this shows great confidence in this? Are you happy about the news? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, with that out of the way, let's move on to our main topics today. How do we select our main topics here on the John Campea Show? Well, it's simple. See, you guys do all the work and you come up with them. And how do you get them to us? Well, it's easy. You go on over to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. Once you get there, you're going to see a form. Fill that form out with your topic or question, hit submit, and then maybe, just maybe, you might see your topic or question featured here on the John Campea Show. With that down, Kris, what is our first main topic today?
We're first hearing from Yana Y. I thought it might be a mistake, but it looks like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood didn't take the #1 spot at the box office as it lost by a lot to Lion King in its second weekend. Is this a big win for Lion King or a big disappointment for Quentin Tarantino? John, what do you think?
Well, first of all, one of the things that you got to point out is the fact that, first of all, yeah, monster second weekend for Lion King, $75 million on its second weekend. Wrap your head around this. After 10 days in release, Lion King sits at $962 million. It is now $28 million away, $38 million away from a $1 billion club after just 10 days. That is crazy. However, let's not just overlook what happened with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It actually, surprisingly enough, it's the biggest opening at $40 million. It's the biggest opening ever for a Quentin Tarantino film. Now, you would think Quentin Tarantino, that sounds weird. That's the biggest one. That's the biggest one that he's ever had in his career. Let's just take a second and look over the box office for this weekend. First of all, obviously, Lion King, $75.5 million, now coming up to $962 million worldwide. That is crazy. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood does very well for itself at $40.3 million. Spider-Man Far From Home hangs into the #3 spot at $12.2 million. It, of course, has already passed the $1 billion club. Toy Story 4 made another $9.8 million. It now sits at 907, I believe it's 917 million, but it still hasn't opened in a number of international markets. So it looks like it's destined for the $1 billion club as well. And then we have Crawl coming in. One of my favorite surprise movies of the year is Crawl. I really enjoyed this film. Made an additional $4 million this weekend, and that rounds out your top 5. So Rob, we're looking at a couple of different things here. On the one hand, we're looking at Lion King holding on to that #1 spot, even though this was the first weekend for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, making $75 million. Now at 962. But even though it comes in second, $40 million for a Quentin Tarantino movie on an opening weekend, which a movie that is very difficult to market. I think a lot of people who aren't diehard Quentin Tarantino fans probably looked at the trailer and had no idea what to make of it. I think it made a very, very good showing for itself. I think the story is Lion King, making another $75 million with its overall thing right now, but you can certainly make an argument for the Quentin Tarantino one. What stands out of all this, what stands out to you the most?
Well, first, how much money Disney's making. They've now become the most successful studio.
Yeah, but we'll get to that in a bit.
Yes, but I think that what stands out to me is that we have to understand what the expectations are as opposed to the reality. And the expectations of Quentin Tarantino's movie were right in line with what they had hoped. His biggest opening ever. A movie like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is never going to make $100 million for a weekend. It's just, it's not that kind of a movie. It's not what I would call a 4-quadrant movie. It's not, the family audience is certainly not clamoring to go see the latest Quentin Tarantino movie. And Quentin Tarantino is still, while I love Quentin Tarantino movies, I always have, he is an acquired taste. There's a lot of people that don't like his films. And it's not like you're going to see an Avengers movie or you're going to see Lion King, which are sort of beloved the world over. These are very much an acquired taste. And I think Quentin Tarantino's become one of our great filmmakers. So when a movie opens that he makes, it's a cause for celebration because it's not a franchise movie. You're going to see the view of universe through one man's eyes. Whatever you're going to get from Tarantino, it's going to be unique to him, even though he's drawing from just about every movie ever made. It's through his filter. It's still unique and interesting. And it's nice to see that he's still a vibrant voice as far as American cinema goes.
Yeah, so again, when you step back and look at it as a whole picture, it's a remarkable weekend, really. You got like 4 films in the top 5 that are going to be either are or going to be $1 billion films. Lion King, a huge thing. Quentin Tarantino, biggest thing ever. It's a huge win all the way around for just about everybody. But what do you guys think? What's the bigger story here? Is the bigger story Lion King, $75 million? Is the bigger story Once Upon a Time in Hollywood doing very well for a Tarantino movie at $40 million? Jump down to the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. With that down, let's move on to our second main topic today. Kris, what is our second main topic today?
This one's from Kevin Crutchfield. I saw on Superhero Hype that The Hollywood Reporter said that Andy Serkis may direct Venom 2. Apparently, he was in LA for face-to-face meetings to discuss the project with Sony, as Ruben Feischner had moved on to other projects. I think it would be an inspired choice, and wonder when and where at all an Andy Serkis would insert himself into the movie. What are your thoughts about Andy Serkis making Venom 2 and his next Precious? Thanks and keep up the great work. So what are your thoughts on Andy doing this?
Well, first of all, it should be pointed out that, the first reports that were coming out from The Hollywood Reporter was that Andy Serkis, of course, he's Gollum. He's the motion capture master, all right, is Andy Serkis. He was Gollum. He was Caesar in the Lord of the Rings movies. I believe he did the motion capture for King Kong as well. But he's also, I really enjoy him just in his own skin as a live action actor. Of course, he was Ulysses Klaue in Black Panther, which I thought he was fantastic in. I love that. And he's done some really good directing as well. He did this little movie with Andrew Garfield and Claire Foy called Breathe, which I actually really loved. He also did that Jungle Book movie, Mowgli, which I was not super big on, to be honest with you. But guys like Peter Jackson have worked with Andy Serkis and used him as a second unit director, and they all rave about his skills as a director. Well, what happened then was, I believe it might have been Variety came out with a follow-up story to the Hollywood Reporter report saying, well, it's actually not just Andy Serkis. They're saying it's kind of down to 3 people right now. And they're saying, out of Variety, that the 3 possibilities to step in and direct Venom 2 are, of course, Andy Serkis, which the Hollywood Reporter had already mentioned. Then Bumblebee and Kubo and the 2 Strings director, Travis Knight, which I think is fascinating. And then you also have Rise of the Planet of the Apes and Captive State director Rupert Wyatt, who's in there as well, who at one point was going to be directing some Halo stuff as well, but that kind of fell through. So according to the reports right now, these are the 3 people in the running. Now, if you just want to look at their movie resume, and just at that, not at a lot of the other particular influences, you might want to lean towards a Travis Knight on this. I mean, he directed Kubo and the 2 Strings, which I think he did a marvelous job with that in a different medium and told a beautiful tale in that, and just in a beautiful way with characters and dialogue and all that kind of stuff. And then he came into a franchise that was in a smoking, heaping pile wreck, also known as the Transformers, and made a Bumblebee movie, which I thought was a stupid idea. I'm not going to lie. When I heard that they were going to do a Bumblebee standalone film, I thought it was a stupid idea. Probably the best Transformers movie ever made. He did such a fantastic job with that movie. Marvelous. Now, obviously, Rupert Wyatt, he did do a great job with Rise of the Planet of the Apes. He did a wonderful job on that. Not so big on Captive State with John Goodman. But I don't know. For me, it's down. If I've got to pick between these guys, Rob, I mean, for me, it's down to either Andy Serkis or Travis Knight. I mean, well, first of all, really, this is a no-lose situation. I mean, if Sony picks Rupert Wyatt, win. If they pick Travis Knight, win. If they pick Andy Serkis, I think that's a win. So I'll be happy with any of these people. And as we often see, Rob, when we hear reports of the short list, 80% of the time it ends up being somebody who was never reported on the short list. So maybe it's not even going to be any 3 of these guys. But these are ones down to. I think I'm going to barely lean towards an Andy Serkis on this, just because I like the dramatic elements that he brings to his movies. He's got a certain sensibility that I think would be a really, really nice match for a Venom 2. But then again, I wouldn't be unhappy with any of these guys. You're seeing this list, Rob. Which one really stands out to you?
Well, all 3 of these guys have made original movies. I mean, Rise of the Planet of the Apes was the first. I was so against that movie when it came out. I loved it. Travis Knight, who I've actually met, he's making original movies. Kubo is fiercely original. It was nominated for an Academy Award. Then he does Bumblebee, which is basically his movie, reinventing the Transformers franchise. And with Andy Serkis doing Breathe, which I agree with you, a beautiful movie, and then doing Mowgli, while it was another retelling of the Jungle Book, it was his sensibility.
It was very different from Jon Favreau's.
Right. And you've got these guys that have all made sort of original movies, or at least they started franchises or reinvigorated franchises. And to get them to come in and do a number 2, I think they're all overqualified. I think they all deserve they deserve a shot to make more original films. But look, if they're going to come in and do a new studio movie and raise their profile, I just wonder how good is it for their careers? Isn't it better to make original works than it is to come in and do the second of a franchise? I mean, unless they can put their own spin on it and really do something unique, I'd rather see all three of these guys go on and do more original work and have somebody new come in and give a newcomer a shot on Venom 2.
Well, I mean...
But if you have to pick one, if I had to pick one, I'd probably say Travis Knight, because I know that there's a movie that Andy... I mean, it's Andy Serkis is supposed to be making this movie called Brundabar that I really want to see him make, but Travis Knight I think he could make Venom a better movie. He could really do something with Venom 2 that we didn't see in Venom 1, and I'd like to see that.
To me wouldn't it be better to go off and do these other sorts of things? Well, it depends. Like, you want to mix up your resume a little bit, and let's not forget, Venom made over $820 million. And the fans, actually, despite the fact that it had divisive reviews, I thought it was a delightfully enjoyable film. A lot of fans seemed to really love it. They kept going back to watch it. $820 million plus dollars. And you're going now into a sequel, and Sony's upping the stakes by not just going out and looking for some first-time director who's never directed anything except music videos or whatever. No, they're looking for some established talent to come in and take this Venom property, which the audience already likes, and try to kick up the notch on the quality level.
That's true.
And I think if you're an Andy Serkis, who's really looking at directing as a career right now, you could really use a big, high-profile film on your resume. Something like that. Travis Knight already has Bumblebee, and he's going to be offered other ones too. But again, to step in, because if you can step into a Venom, say make Venom 2 a billion-dollar film, and make it more enjoyable where people think it's better than the previous one. Of course, you're putting yourself in a little bit of a position of risk where what happens if people like the first one better? That's a risk. But, no risk, no reward. Rupert Wyatt, look, he can only lean on his success of Rise of the Planet of the Apes for so long. At some point, he needs to put out something to stay relevant, I think. I'm not saying he's not relevant now, but I'm saying it's been, what was it, 2011? The Rise of the Planet of the Apes came out? We're talking 8 years ago. He's done a few things since then, but nothing high profile. This could be really good for him.
Yes.
So, and Rob, you're often saying something that I always think is really, really wise, when you often say, sometimes you got to do the things you need to do so later you can do the things you want to do. And for Rupert Wyatt or an Andy Serkis in particular, you do a film like Venom, make it a big hit. That could open the doors to do more of these smaller original films later. So I honestly think it could be a win-win. But the one person on that list that I think really falls under the definition of what you're putting up there might actually be a Travis Knight, because he's got to, well, granted, Bumblebee didn't come anywhere near to making $1 billion or anything like that, but it was financially successful and people loved it. And I think that's going to open doors for bigger stuff for him too. But man, I just can't see me being unhappy with any of these names that they pick, to be honest with you.
Right.
Serkis, I'm happy. Knight, I'm happy. Wyatt, I'm happy. The question is, guys, what do you think about these three? Do you think any of these three would be tops on your list? And as a matter of fact, we're going to make that the topic of today's question of the day. I'm asking you guys, out of those three directors that are being named right now, which one do you think should actually direct a Venom 2? I want you to go over to my Twitter account, which you can see my Twitter handle right there, simply at John Campea. And right now, the top post on my Twitter account is, reports say Andy Serkis, Travis Knight, and Rupert Wyatt are up to direct Venom 2. Who do you hope gets the gig? Right now, I put this up just before the show started. Right now, a little over 1,700 of you guys have voted. And right now, Travis Knight holds the lead. Right now, 44% of you guys are saying Travis Knight, 35% of you are saying Andy Serkis, and a solid 20% of you right now are saying Rupert Wyatt. What do you guys think? Go have your say. Go on over there and cast your vote. I will leave that poll up there for the rest of the day. All right. With all that down and out of the way, let's now move on to our third main topic today. Kris, what is our third main topic today?
This is from Nicholas Metner. Hello, everyone. One of the most anticipated movies of the year is It Chapter 2. The first one was amazing, and the trailers for the new one have been crazy. Just saw a report that says the movie is going to be almost 3 hours. I'm a little worried because is this just more for the sake of more? The last one was just 2 hours and 15 minutes and had an awesome pace to it. Are they getting carried away with this runtime? Thanks. So a potentially 3-hour runtime, how do you feel about that?
Look, whenever you hear movies getting close to 3 hours, that's got to give you a little bit of pause. It's got to give you a little bit of pause. Because there are some people that simply will not go to a movie if it's 3 hours or close to 3 hours long. And sometimes, one of my, I enjoyed Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I did. But one of my criticisms was that at 2 hours and 45 minutes, that movie was too long for that movie. Like, that movie should have been closer to 2 hours. And there are other movies that should be closer to 3 hours and what have you. Like you pointed out, the first It was 2 hours and 15 minutes. That movie has a terrific pace. Just a beautiful pacing to it. That 2 hours and 15 minutes, that even though that's a little long, it felt perfect for it. The reports right now are that It Chapter 2 is going to come in closer to 3 hours at 2 hours and 45 minutes. Is that just adding more for the sake of more? Well, the director of It and It Chapter 2, Andy Muschietti, was talking about that, and here's what he had to say about the situation. He said this: at the beginning, when you're writing and building the beats of the story, everything that you put in there seems very essential to the story. However, when you have the movie finally edited and it's 4 hours long, you realize that some of the events can easily be lifted, but the essence of the story remains intact. You cannot deliver a 4-hour movie because people will start to feel uncomfortable no matter what they see. But we ended up having a movie that is 2 hours and 45 minutes, and the pacing is very good. Nobody, talking about some test screenings they did and the executives that they showed to, nobody who's seen the movie has had any complaint about a 2 hour and 45 minute runtime. And to me, Rob, that's the key thing. We're always talking about there's no such thing as what's the right runtime for a movie. The question is, what's the right runtime for that movie? Some movies are best at 90 minutes. Some movies are best at 2 hours and 30 minutes. Endgame came in at a breakneck 3 hours and change things. It's about finding the right runtime for your movie. And while I agree that off the top, like, you think the first one was 2:15 and it was perfect, why go 2:45? Well, I think the director gives his answer. It's got a great pace to it, even at 2:45, and we've shown it to people, and nobody is commenting on the runtime at this point. So, to me, that's good enough to say, I accept what Andy's saying. If he thinks this still maintains good pace and nobody's mentioning anything about it, then maybe 2:45 is the right runtime for this, just as 2:15 was the right runtime for the first one. But I don't know, Rob. A movie like this, because I've heard a number of horror people say, horror films shouldn't run too long. I've heard other people, in horror films, who are bigger horror films fans than I am, say something like that. But you're seeing this, 2:45 for It Chapter 2. Good idea, bad idea? What do you think?
Well, I think movies are kind of like wizards in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. They're as long as they should be. Like wizards arrive, they're never late. They arrive just when they should. And I think, look, if you like It Chapter 1, and it works for you, why do you suddenly think that the people who made that movie, who have also made It Chapter 2, are going to screw you? They're going to deliver the goods. They're going to give you what you want. I don't know if you read the book. I read that book when it first came out. I spent the summer of '86, the latter half of, it came out in '86. I read that whole book. It's a huge book. It's just got gigantic amounts of story. And now you're going to see the Losers Club, both as kids and adults, kind of like, but more so. And I just think the story is going to move at a breakneck pace. I think, John, you and I saw an extended scene that they touch on in the trailer.
So good.
That scene alone, I'm like, give me 3 hours of that. And I think It Chapter 2 is going to be, I liked the first film. I didn't love it. But just that scene that we saw at CinemaCon, I'm like, I am more excited than ever to see this movie. I cannot wait. I think we're in for a treat. It is going to be the Return of the King of horror films, probably. And I'm excited.
And the trailers for it, the most recent trailer too. I said this on my show this weekend. I think the most recent trailer for It Chapter 2, I think is my favorite horror movie trailer I've ever seen. I just love that trailer. Anyway, Kris, you're hearing about this movie, 2 hours and 45 minutes. We just had some big discussions this past year about runtime of movies when we knew Endgame was coming in close to 3. For a horror movie like an It, or in this case, It Chapter 2, is 2:45 too long, or do you think it can work perfectly fine at that length?
I feel like, and I'm saying this as somebody who is not a fan of the horror genre, that runtime totally makes sense. I mean, we've already learned that this is going to be one of the bloodiest movies in history.
Yeah, they talk a lot about
They've talked so much about how this is going to be insanely violent. There's going to be more time needed to fit all of that violence and, grotesque stuff happening. We also are having, like Rob was saying, the Losers Club, both past and present. We're covering more of their history.
That's true.
That book is so dense. There is so much history of what happens in Derry that we're getting a lot more of supposedly in this one. So an extra 30 minutes, that completely makes sense to me. And like you were saying, why would we distrust them now? It Chapter 1 was really, really well received. And if you're a Stephen King fan, this adaptation was so well done. So, of course, if we're getting more of the book stuff in there, it's going to work.
The one thing that does make me a little worried sometimes is that when a director makes a first film and it turns out to be successful, well, then the studio will give him more rope. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I think a director gets tempted to become a little bit self-indulgent and maybe putting a little bit more stuff in there than they need to. But to me, it's all about the pacing of the movie. If at 2 hours, 45 minutes, it maintains a good pace, I'm good with that. The question is, guys, what do you think about that? The whole notion that this film's going to come in closer to 3 hours than 2. Do you think that's too long? Do you think it could be perfect for it? Do you not really care one way or the other? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, with that down, let's move on to our fourth main topic today. Kris, what is our fourth main topic today?
This is from Ryan Clark. Hi, John. I love the show and watch it every day.
Thank you, Ryan.
As you know, Disney set the global box office record in 2016, earning $7.61 billion that year. This weekend, Disney broke that record, earning $7.67 billion so far for the year, which is insane since it's only July.
Jeez.
With movies such as Frozen 2 and Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker still to come out this year, what do you think Disney's global box office total will be at the end of the year? Disney is making money hand over fist, like Rob was saying. How do you feel about their projections and how they're doing?
Look, Rob, this is insane. This is insane. Like we have been seeing some insane numbers this year. We talk about Endgame, like might hit $2.8 billion. I mean, we are talking about stupid numbers this year, but I can't think of a number more stupid than this. We talked a lot going into 2019 when we looked ahead and we looked at their release schedule, and a lot of us go, hey, you know what? It is most likely, almost a guarantee, that we're going to see Disney break the all-time record for most money by a studio in a single year in history, breaking their own record from 2016. But even with that, if you had tried to suggest that they were going to break the all-time record by July, I don't know. If you really want to wrap your head around just how ridiculous this is, take a look at this. This is Disney's year, okay? Avengers Endgame made $2.79 billion, which is just still so stupid. Captain Marvel shocked the world. Now, I didn't think it would make $1 billion. Shocked the world, $1.12 billion. Aladdin, for heaven's sakes, has now officially crossed the $1 billion mark. The Lion King is at $962 million after just 10 days of release. It's going to join the $1 billion club. That'll be 4 for Disney in 1 year. Toy Story 4 is now sitting at $917 million, but as we mentioned earlier, this is one of those films that has a very prolonged rollout. It still hasn't opened at all in a lot of markets. This very well could hit the $1 billion mark too. That'll be 5. And then Dumbo at $352. Just these movies alone have caused Disney to set the all-time record for biggest box office for a single studio in a year. But they're not done. They're not done. They still have these little indie nature documentaries known as Frozen 2 coming out. That, by the way, the first one was $1 billion film. So this one's going to threaten to be $1 billion. That'll be 6. Maleficent 2. The first one made like what, $600-700 million? I didn't even like Maleficent 1. I didn't even like that movie. And that movie made ridiculous amounts of cash. I don't think Maleficent 2 is going to be $1 billion film, but it's going to make a lot of money. And oh, that's right. Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker coming later in the year. That's going to be another $1 billion film. That'll be $7 billion films from one studio in 1 year. Guys, listen, seriously. We can talk, and we do talk a lot about big numbers. A lot, right? This big number, this big. But we talk about big numbers so much that I fear that when something like this happens, we don't pause enough to appreciate we are seeing something that we very well might not see again for a long time. These numbers, breaking the all-time record by July, still having in your back pocket a Maleficent 2, and that's the smallest film you got coming out, Frozen 2, and Star Wars Episode 9, and you've already broken the record. Now you're just going to pad that record. Now you're just going to pad it more. This is history we're seeing here. And I really fear that with all the talk of big numbers, we're not stopping to appreciate just how ludicrous this is. This is something I don't think Disney can really break for a while. I mean, these are crazy numbers, Rob. When you look at this, can we truly appreciate what it is we're seeing? Or are all these numbers just so dizzying, it just gets lost in the mire of it all?
Well, I think that what's being lost in all this talk about money and all that, is watching an American company succeeding at what it does best. Disney is supposed to be making entertainments for everybody. It has a long history. Remember, Disney was not the powerhouse 20 years ago, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, when they made Tron back in 82, they could barely get theaters to take it. You know, Disney did not have a great track record. And when you're watching a company, they're making event entertainments, 4-quadrant entertainments for everybody to go to see. Multiple generations of people are going to see these movies. Under Bob Iger's stewardship, getting things like Marvel and Pixar and Lucasfilm and all of that. Very smart moves. Very smart moves. And you're seeing a company that knows what it's supposed to be doing and is doing it very well. And you can be all cynical and all I understand all that, but this is a company that's doing well. It knows what it's supposed to be doing. It's providing, its job is to provide entertainment, make movies for the masses, and that's what it's doing, and it's doing it really well. They're not putting out 20 movies or 30 movies a year. They're giving us 8 or 10 movies a year, and all of them, when your worst movie makes $350 million plus.
In Dumbo's case.
Dumbo's case, that's pretty good. And so I like seeing a company succeed. Now, there's also the cynic in me going, oh, they're gobbling up all the other voices. Look, they're not. They're doing what they're supposed to be doing. They've got all these great franchises, and they're administering them well. And isn't that what we want to see from companies? I think so.
Yeah, and look, what we got to always keep in mind here, too, is that these box office dollars, every dollar represents somebody saying, I want to go see this piece of entertainment. I mean, and that's what the bottom line is, that Disney, this year in particular, has been cranking out films that people want to see. You know, I keep hearing people going, yeah, Disney's just being greedy. What are you talking about? They're making entertainment, and you are choosing, and your neighbors are choosing to run out and go see the stuff. And guess what? They're coming home happy. And they're coming home smiling. They're coming home having been entertained, and hence they want to go back and watch the next one that they do. And that's what I think is getting lost in this, is that we see also all the numbers. We forget those numbers represent an individual going, I want to go see that movie tonight, and buying their ticket and going to see the movie. And that's what that represents. And when you look at it in that term as well, like, Disney isn't just some corporate machine that's making some weather dominator like Cobra. Like, they're actually creating entertainment that people want to see and are going out to see and celebrating and enjoying. And it's just a remarkable achievement from an artistic point of view on that level as well, when you're making things that people really are loving. Kris, let me ask you this. You're seeing these types of numbers. Can your head make sense of it, or is it just dizzying like it is to a lot of us? Like, what's the first thing that strikes you when you see these types of results?
I mean, it's insane. It's insane to see those figures. It's so much money. I can't visualize that amount of money. Oh my God. I don't have a savings account, you guys. Disney's crushing it. It's incredible. And, you know, the movies they've been doing, like you guys were saying, have been so quality. They've been so good. And really, I know so many people, like when Disney first got involved with Marvel, people were freaking out. Oh my gosh, they're going to taint my franchise. They're going to mess up my things. They amplified how good these different things were. You know, they just ran with that baton and made the MCU really what it is, because they believed in it and they put more money and resources into it. We got better actors. We got such good directors. We had amazing writers because of Disney's resources. And so it's really cool to see it pay off well. And the movies they have coming out, Frozen 2, I didn't even like Frozen 1 that much. I think that's pretty overrated. Frozen 2 looks badass.
It looks great.
It looks so
You know, I
cool.
want to speak to something that you just brought up, Kris. I mean, movies are supposed to have magic in them. They're supposed to have that Tinkerbell fairy dust sprinkled on them. And Disney, you can be cynical and call them
Again, my head
formulaic.
just went in completely the wrong place. But please continue.
Well, I'm just saying that this makes people not just excited about Disney's product, but it makes people excited about the magic of all movies. You know, and I think the reason that a movie like, and go with me on this, even though It is a horror film, when Disney puts out a bunch of franchise properties that do well, then you know that you get excited. Well, It's coming out, and if It 1 was really good, It 2, people are going to get. They're not going, oh, Disney's only making G or PG movies. They get excited about the next franchise property that's coming out. So as a byproduct of Disney's success, I think we get more excited when we get an It 2 or we get a John Wick 3. Because when I go see Toy Story, I don't think of it as, I'm just going to go see this kid's animated movie. I'm like, no, it's Toy Story. It's for everyone. And so when I think about movies about talking toys that come to life, I'm like, Toy Story is my franchise. If I want to see a franchise about a dude shooting other dudes in the head, John Wick's my thing. But I'm thinking about them all in terms of franchise entertainment, movie entertainment. It's all great movies. So when Disney's doing great movies, and I think Venom made $800 million because Disney has made people excited about movies again.
Absolutely. It's so hard to get out of your house. There's so many reasons to stay on your couch and stream. And they're making us excited to go out and go through that whole ritual of being in a movie theater.
Yeah.
Because it's fun and exciting. And it's nice to go get your popcorn and everything. I've missed that. It was really easy to just, stay at home, watch whatever was streaming, watch whatever was on Hulu that day. I want to go to the movies again. And
Rob,
it's a great time.
To your point, I saw Crawl recently, and I loved Crawl. And there was these older folks walking out ahead of me out of the movie that were coming down the stairs at the AMC. The AMC Burbank 16's got that stadium seating, so you got to walk down the stairs first and then exit the theater. And I say older, it's not like they were in their 90s, but they were probably in their 60s. And it was a husband and wife, and it looks like one of their friends were there. And I overheard just a touch of the conversation. Like, first of all, it's not the average person you expect to see in Crawl, these 3 6-year-old in their 60s. But the one says, Ed, I assume she's talking about her husband, the last time he brought me to the movies was for that one where the Tony Stark fella died, or the Iron Man fella died. So he's talking about Endgame, right? And I had such a good time with that. So when he said he wanted to come to the movies tonight, I said yes. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but basically it's that. People are going to the Disney movies, getting the magic of the movies, and going, yeah, I want to go back to the movie theater.
Yep.
And that ended up benefiting a movie like Crawl to some small degree. And I just think that's great. So these are ridiculous numbers, everybody. Just stupid. What do you think about the fact that Disney just broke that record in July alone? Jump down to the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. All right. With that down, let's now move on to our final main topic today. Kris, what is our final main topic today?
This is from Doug Miller. We all know Rob is murder kittens to see a Moon Knight movie, and I can't help but wonder if we didn't just get a hint that it might actually happen.
Murder kittens.
Murder kittens.
I've never heard that before.
Saw on Twitter that both Kevin Smith, who we know is close to the MCU, and the Russo brothers, have just said that Keanu Reeves should be Moon Knight. Now, we know Reeves has been talking with Feige, and who's closer to the MCU than the Russos? So, is it safe to assume that Reeves will in fact play Moon Knight? Thank you. Rob, you're so murder kittens for this. First of all, stop murdering kittens.
Never do that.
Are you excited about Keanu potentially playing Moon Knight?
Here's the thing. You know what? Everyone knows I want a Moon Knight movie. Everyone knows I love Moon Knight. But I love classical Moon Knight, the Doug Mensch, Bill Sienkiewicz version of Moon Knight, where Moon Knight has multiple. He's cab driver Jake Lockley, sort of the Bruce Wayne-esque Mark Spector, and Moon Knight himself, and Stephen Grant. So he's got these... Moon Knight has to be younger. Keanu Reeves is in his 50s. I love Keanu Reeves. But if you're going to make 3 Moon Knight movies, and hopefully he'll be in the Avengers or the West Coast Avengers if they do that, you got to have somebody younger play Moon Knight. Somebody in their late 20s or early 30s so we can get 3 or 4 movies out of them. I love Keanu Reeves, but I just think he's too old to play the Moon Knight that I want to see.
Well, I mean, and there's a couple things you got to keep in mind here, too. Number one, while there are headlines going around saying Keanu Reeves may play Moon Knight, the reality is it's specifically this, that during an interview, Kevin Smith was talking to the Russo brothers. Keanu Reeves came up, who we all know has been in the news recently because he's confirmed that he and Kevin Feige have talked, and Feige's confirmed that he's, on a number of occasions, talked to Keanu Reeves. They want to find a place for him. And Kevin Smith said, you know who that dude should play? Moon Knight. And then the Russo brothers go, that's right on the money. I mean, that's really all that was said. But it's kind of worth discussing at least because we know Kevin Feige does want him in the MCU. They are running out of characters to give him unless they want to make him a mutant now at some point and all that kind of stuff. You're right. He's in his 50s at this point. He is. But his body forgot to keep aging at 42.
I know.
I mean, we just keep forgetting. This dude does not look all that different than he did in the first Matrix movie. If you shave off the little bit the gray in his beard, you shave that off. He doesn't look too different. I don't know. I think they could pull it off. But Rob, let me ask you this. As a guy who's more of a Moon Knight aficionado, were they to go with the Keanu Reeves, is there a way to approach the Moon Knight story where Keanu Reeves' age becomes less of an issue, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, if they go with a more modern take where Moon Knight's basically insane, they could do that. It would really depend, because I think the Moon Knight that I fell in love with is very different from the Moon Knight that we have now in the comics. The Moon Knight that I loved was basically, and the creators will admit this, he was kind of a Batman ripoff. He really was. And what made him different, what I loved, is that he had these, well, they later made it literal, but he had multiple identities, multiple secret identities. That when he was a cab driver, that allowed him to have his ears to the streets to hear what was going on. So it was very different. And it really depends on which incarnation of Moon Knight they go with. And if they went with the more modern incarnation where his personality, his fractured personality makes him pretty insane, Keanu Reeves, I think, would be better suited to that version of Moon Knight. The more Batman-esque version, probably somebody younger.
All right, guys. Well, the question is, it's all theorizing at this point, but let's ask. If it were to happen and a Keanu Reeves were to become a Moon Knight, is that something you'd be down for? Or do you think you'd rather see John Wick himself play a different character in the MCU? Jump down to the comment section below and let us know what you guys think. Okay, with all that out of the way now, guys, we're going to set up some time here to take your live questions. But before we get to the live questions, there's a number of other things going on in the world of movies and entertainment, but we don't quite have time to get into them as main topics. But we want to make sure if you're watching the show that you at least get caught up on these things. So right now, Fact Checker Jonathan proudly presents to you today's installment of the Movie News Feed. Check it out.
First up, Avengers Endgame is one of the biggest movies of all time. Not only is the film phenomenal, but it's also a great springboard for new stories, new characters, and new ideas. Now, one of its writers has said he wouldn't mind writing a solid Superman movie. From CinemaBlend, Endgame co-writer Stephen McFeely said that because Captain America worked so well, he thinks Superman could also resonate with modern audiences. McFeely said the following: I think Captain America shows there are certainly ways to do a really good Superman movie in this day. You don't have to dirty him up. You don't have to get rid of his earnestness. The Christopher Reeve Superman is one of my favorite movies, so that's one we certainly borrow from all the time. Next up, Netflix has decided to give the devil his due and has expanded the final Season 5 episode order for Lucifer, adding 6 more hours to bring the season total to 16 episodes. From Deadline, the addition was announced on the official Netflix US Twitter account on Friday. The move to add additional episodes may have come from impassioned fan support, the same base that got the former Fox show moved to Netflix. Next up, It Chapter 2 floats into theaters on September 6th. One of the main reasons why both It films have been able to create such positive hype is how pleased Stephen King is with the adaptation of his source material. From JoeBlow.com, the author has just made another major positive post regarding Chapter 2's final battle between the Losers Club and Pennywise. It reads as follows: It Chapter 2, the final confrontation, is epic. The runtime for the sequel is said to be around 165 minutes. Next up, The Irishman hasn't even hit Netflix yet, and acclaimed director Martin Scorsese is already onto his next project. Killers of the Flower Moon has long been planned to star Scorsese favorite Leonardo DiCaprio. From MovieWeb.com, now word comes that Robert De Niro will also be joining the project, with shooting set to take place during spring and summer 2020. Robert De Niro will be playing the role of William Hale. The synopsis is as follows. Set in 1920s Oklahoma, where the Osage Indians were granted revenue rights to oil discovered under their lands that was harvested by oil companies. Suddenly, they began to get murdered, as did those trying to investigate. It came down to the newly created Bureau of Investigation to overcome the corrupting influences from oil money and politics to solve the murder mystery, one that would bring the FBI to prominence. Killers of the Flower Moon is expected to get a fall or winter release in 2020. And finally, Russi Taylor, the voice actress behind the famed Disney character Minnie Mouse, died Friday in Glendale, California, the Walt Disney Company confirmed. She was 75. From Variety, For more than 30 years, Minnie and Russie worked together to entertain millions around the world, a partnership that made Minnie a global icon and Russie a Disney legend beloved by fans everywhere. After assuming the character in 1986, she has since appeared in hundreds of Disney projects, including television shows, theme park experiences, animated shorts, and theatrical films. While working for Disney, Taylor also met her husband Wayne Allwine, who had voiced Mickey Mouse since 1977. The two married in 1991 and remained together until Allwine's death in 2009. And that will do it for today's installment of the Movie News Feed.
And now you are all caught up to date on everything going on. Special thanks to fact checker Jonathan for throwing that together for us. All right, guys, with all that down, where am I? Oh, there I am. With all that down, it's now time for us to move on to our main topics of the day. You guys have been firing in topics and everything, so let's go main topics. Our live questions today, you guys have been firing in questions, so let's get over there and start taking those right now. And we're starting things off with Sam Fisher, who writes, I think my favorite TV channel is TCM. I just watched, is that Turner Classic Movies?
Yeah.
I just watched Yours, Mine, and Ours. That's not bad, actually. With an intro by Alicia Malone, The Great White Hope, with an intro by Ben I always mispronounce Ben's last name. Mankiewicz, and I have An American in Paris recorded. So, you know what? I'll be honest with you guys. I never watched TCM.
I loved it.
They had a
I've never
sci-fi
watched
festival
TCM.
last week that was great.
Yeah,
TCM introduced me to everything. That's
Really?
how I got so obsessed with Jimmy Stewart and Cary Grant. The Philadelphia Story is one of my all-time favorite movies, and that movie with them and Katharine Hepburn launched me into loving all of those old films.
You watch it often?
TCM's great.
I don't think I've ever watched TCM. I think I'm going to start paying attention to it.
Yeah, I mean, and they have the great film festival here every year in LA too.
That's right.
The TCM Film Festival,
Yeah.
which, it's basically one big commercial for their network, but they show brand new restored versions of all these great classics, Hitchcock movies. I mean, it's great. If you want to begin your film education, TCM is ground zero.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks for throwing that in there, Sam Fisher. Appreciate that, man. Don't know what to put writes. Gonna give you positive thoughts today, John. Luke is resurrected. Ketchup on eggs and pineapple on pizza is banned, and Jennifer Garner befriends you. That's a good day, because I already told you there's going to be some evacuating of the bowels in the movie theater if Luke Skywalker physically walks back onto screen and starts schooling some fools. We'll see what happens. And Jennifer Garner, you know how to reach me. So let's leave it. But thank you for that. Don't know what to put. Sully writes, I don't get it when people complain about Disney making so much more money than other studios. I ask people, so would you stop if you were Bob Iger? And that, I don't get that. Like, people say, oh, Disney's just being greedy. No, they're making movies and everybody's going out to see them. What are you supposed to do? Nah, let's not put out any more movies. Even though people want them and people are going to go see them and people are enjoying, let's not make any more movies. We're just being... I'll tell you what, every single studio is making every dime that they think they can. Sony's doing it, and they should. Warner Brothers is doing it, and they should. Paramount's doing it, and they should. And Disney's doing it, and they should. I just don't buy that argument, Rob. I don't understand why even people bring that up as a complaint. Do you?
No. I mean, it's look, there's this idea that, yes, we have our corporate overlords and all that, but Disney's doing what they've always done. It's they're trying to make great entertainment. They're trying to make the world the happiest place on earth, and why not? And they've been doing it for years and years and years, and now they're really good at it. I don't think people who didn't like The Last Jedi would say that, but I think for the most part they've been doing a stellar job this year.
Yeah, and Kris, it's not like Disney is like some big bully that's going up to Sony and going, give me your lunch money, and taking money from them. They're just putting out their own movies like everybody else.
I think people love to vilify corporations,
And sometimes for good reasons.
And sometimes it's fine. But in this case, they're just doing what they should as a successful business, trying to continue their successful model. I mean, I understand that people want to eat at a mom and pop restaurant and support local businesses, but sometimes I'm going to eat Whataburger because I know it's good.
Yeah.
They're doing what they're doing well, and I don't see why people are
And they're
getting all
succeeding.
upset.
They're not hiding it. They're not like hiring Cambridge Analytica to data mine everybody in the four states that matter in the election. They're come out. They're like, we're Disney. We want to make tons of money. We want you to come see our movies and buy our popcorn and spend $200 for a lightsaber. They make no bones about it, and they're delivering the goods.
And people are eating it up and enjoying it. So that's really all there is. That's what every company's trying to do. Anyway, Sully. Oh, that was Sully. Matthew Grant writes, best legit, really good dog film. Kind of looking forward to The Art of Racing. That does look great with Milo Ventimiglia. That looks really good. A Dog's Way Home was completely spoiled in its own trailer.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you guys, when I think of good dog properties, there was a Canadian TV show when I was a little kid called The Littlest Hobo. And right now, there are people 30s or older in Canada right now yelling amen at their computer monitors right now. Basically, the Littlest Hobo was this. It was a show that was made for about $23 per episode. And it was a German Shepherd. He was the Littlest Hobo. And he just wandered from town to town, would befriend somebody that needed some help and did something to help them. And the dog didn't talk or anything like that. It was just, and that was it. And then at the end of the show, he would leave the person because he's got commitment issues, apparently. And he would just move on and move forward. So when I think of good dog programming, that's what I think. Kris, what would you say is your favorite dog movie?
I love that show is just like the Ronin of dogs.
Yeah,
just
that's
a samurai with no master.
That's basically it, actually. It's a good analogy.
I was a huge fan of those Homeward Bound movies growing up.
Oh, right.
Those were wonderful to me. I'm really excited, too, about The Art of Racing in the Rain because I've read that book and I cried so hard in public.
That's all Anne ever says. She goes, I read that book and I bawled my eyes out. I'm like, okay.
You read it in like 45 minutes and you just sob, just ugly cry. It's so good, though.
Well, Kevin Costner as a dog, I'm in. You know, I can't. But I don't know the difference between A Dog's Journey, A Dog's Way Home. Is The Art of Racing in the Rain? Is that the third part of the trilogy? Like,
no, it's a different.
I know,
movie,
it's a whole different thing. But look. I'm still waiting for Disney to do a modern update of the Shaggy DA.
What about Benji?
I mean, I loved. When I was a kid, I saw the Benji movies. You know, I enjoyed them. Old Yeller, when I saw as a kid.
That's my dad's all-time favorite movie.
That movie slayed me.
That's my dad's all-time favorite movie. Old
then
Yeller.
There's K9. You know, Tom Hanks.
K9, yeah. What's the one with Jim Belushi?
Maybe that was K9.
I think that's K9 because the one with Tom Hanks is
Turner
and
Hooch.
Tom Hanks is not K9.
No, not Tucker. What's the Tom Hanks one?
Turner and Hooch?
Turner and Hooch.
Which I liked too.
Yeah, there's a bunch in Beethoven and what have you. So a lot of good possible ones out there. Okay, let's move on here. BMC writes, Happy Monday, guys. Who's the better Pitt character, Cliff Booth or Lieutenant Aldo Rain? Cliff might be my new favorite. I'll tell you what, you guys know I don't love Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but I liked it. But I do love a lot of the characters, particularly the main ones, played by Leo and Brad. And I really like his Cliff Booth character a lot. But I got to go with Aldo Rain. I want my scalps. I just got to go Aldo Rain. Rob, you saw both of these films.
Look, I like Cliff Booth, but Aldo Rain is my man.
Yeah.
Anybody who wants Nazi scalps, you know.
Really badly, too.
And I loved his character. And I love his Italian accent.
Oh, yeah.
So good.
Grazie. Yeah, as an Italian, I ate that up. Okay, let's move on here. Superman Steve writes, Hey, John, I didn't actually watch the entire spoiler review yesterday. I just wanted to, I remember that. I just wanted to bring your attention that it was not out in Australia yet. So yesterday, guys, I did the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood spoiler discussion. And Superman Steve put in a comment saying, hey, I can't wait to watch this movie. It doesn't open here in Australia for X amount of time. I'm like, dude, what are you doing in the spoiler review? Like, get out of here. You don't want to spoil it for yourself. But apparently he just stuck his nose in to say hi for that. Good. I hope we didn't spoil it for you, Superman Steve. Nathan Oswald writes, what are your thoughts on the controversial Star Trek, the original series episode, Spock's Brain? Well, if I knew which one that was, I could tell you. But I have a feeling that there's somebody in this room that does know that. Which episode is Spock's Brain?
Spock's Brain is the first episode of the much maligned third season of the original series, the final season. And it is the episode, of course, where you have a matriarchal and a patriarchal society, mostly a matriarchal one. Men are basically Cro-Magnon brutes, and these beautiful mini-skirted women are living in a technologically advanced society under the ground, but they don't know much. And when they need to know something, they go to their teaching device, and it helps them. And they end up stealing Spock's brain and put it in their teaching device.
I have seen every episode of Star Trek, the original. I don't remember that one.
They, as the men call the women in the movie, they're the givers of pain and delight. Now, Spock's brain
That's
is
something you can say today on your dating
Oh, you can.
profile.
Spock's brain is generally cited as being the worst episode of the original Star Trek, but I would posit to you that there are some interesting things that society alone, the difference between the men and the women on this planet and the things that happen, it is goofy as heck, but it's interesting.
The givers
of pain and
delight. I got to run that one by
They're
Anne
the
when she
names
gets home.
Morg or iMorg.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
well, there
and let
you
me
go.
tell you. And Spock is, by the way, Dr. McCoy turns Spock into a brainless automaton. I mean, he's able to walk, and McCoy can control him with a keypad. And Leonard Nimoy is acting as his brainless self.
Damn it, Jim. Turn him back on and off.
I suggest everyone go watch that episode of Star Trek, but look for the good in it.
All right, we got to move on here. Next one also comes from Nathan, who writes, what's your favorite song by the B-52s? Oh, Love Shack. That's easy. Love Shack. Nathan Oswald also writes, when my mom was a kid, she had a friend who, no joke, would put ranch dressing on her eggs. I have seen that. Ranch dressing is kind of a Swiss Army knife of side condiments. I've seen people use it with their French fries. I've seen people obviously on their salads, but on their burgers. I've seen a lot of different uses for that. So I'm not surprised to hear that. Film Boss writes, thank you, John. You helped me get through a lot. Well, thanks for writing that in, Film Boss. And it's awfully great that the show and the film fan community can be here, because I always say, man, movies and talking about movies can be a great oasis from when we're dealing with a lot of crap in our lives. It just refreshes our minds for a minute, lets us come back into our real world problems with a fresh perspective and everything. And I'm glad this show's been able to be here for that, Film Boss. So thanks for mentioning that, man. All right, Drinks on Me writes, is it possible that Ad Astra is a sequel to Space Cowboys? The rarely ever talked about Space Cowboys with Tommy Lee Jones, with James Garner, with
Clint Eastwood.
With Clint Eastwood in it. I like Space Cowboys.
It's great.
I do. And of course it can't be a sequel, because we all know what happens to Tommy Lee Jones at the end of the movie. But I enjoy.
Or do we?
I like that movie. Rob, you remember that one?
I love Space Cowboys. Are you kidding me? It's like a dream come true movie for me. It means I one day could be an astronaut still.
It could still happen. You saw it, Kris?
I did not. I did not see that one.
Oh my God.
I don't think we should base what we can do in the future off of Clint Eastwood movies, though, because if you've seen The Mule, I mean...
Yes. But I mean, the ending, I thought the ending of Space Cowboy, I don't want to give it away for those of you who haven't seen it, but Tommy Lee Jones is a key figure in the ending of the movie, it's got a great image. The final image of the movie is awesome and sorrowful and great all at the same time. If you haven't seen it, you should check that out.
Did that come out around Armageddon?
I feel like it would have been that
dueling
era.
guns?
Yeah,
Okay, that's
I do
probably
too.
why.
Okay, let's see here. David Hildreth writes, thank you for the show. Better chase scene, opening of Casino Royale or Civil War with Cap, Winter Soldier, and Falcon and Black Panther. Whoo, I'll tell you, if you're talking about the chase through the tunnel, through the traffic tunnel, that chase scene, the opening chase scene of Casino Royale is great, but I just remember losing my mind over that chase scene with Cap and the running and all that kind of stuff. They actually utilized in that scene a technique that they used in the Twilight movies. They developed this technique in the Twilight movies because vampires are supposed to be really fast, right? So what they did, and whenever I'm in an airport, I do the same thing. I pretend I'm in a Twilight movie or I'm Captain America chasing after somebody, where they went into the woods and they built this giant conveyor belt that just like a moving sidewalk sort of thing, right? So, you go to the airport and you get those long stretches down the terminals, you just stand on it and it takes you down across. So they build that so it's moving, and then they have the actors run on that as the belt itself is moving, and it gives the illusion, the optical illusion, that they're actually running really fast. Whereas if you actually look at the strides their legs are making, their bodies are actually moving faster than their legs should be. But it's a great visual effect, and they used a bit of that in the movie, and then some other, but they improved on the technique. They did something else a little bit different with it. But I got to say, that scene. Rob, what about you?
Well, I love that opening of Casino Royale, but having multiple heroes or villains, or wink, wink, nudge, nudge, fighting is pretty great. The Casino Royale scene is more grounded in reality.
Yes.
And that's why I think it's really impressive. I mean, they climb up on that giant crane and fight on that, and it's Sebastian Foucault, I think Foucault is the name of the runner. He's a free runner. So in real life, that's what he does, and they hired him to be the guy that Bond is chasing, and it's very cool. So I might have to go with Casino Royale only because it's more realistic, if that makes any sense.
Which one do you prefer, Kris?
Oh, I'm a sucker for a Bond opening. That chase scene.
That was great. It was great. All right. Let's see here. Nathan writes, how do you prevent damaging the eye sockets during a multi-opti pupil autonomy? Optomy, I mean. I have no idea what that is. Anybody?
Well, you've come to the right place. I'm actually a doctor. No. I don't. What?
No idea what that is, Nathan. All right. Akash Telly writes, Anthony Starr, Homelander, was my MVP from The Boys. He was charismatic, creepy, and terrifying, and the end was, woo, cannot wait for season 2. Well, somebody in this room, one person in this room hasn't started watching it yet, one person in this room hasn't finished it yet, and one person in this room has watched the whole thing. I did love him in that, but my MVP has still got to be Carl Urban. You know what? Somebody brought up Rob the other day on one of my shows. They said, basically Carl Urban's Billy Butcher is kind of Captain Jack Sparrow. And I was about to go, and then I stopped and went, you know what? there's actually, that's kind of true. The only thing missing is having Butcher go Savi at some point. But you're like on episode 6 or something. What are you thinking of The Boys right now?
I love it. As I was talking with Kris, I actually think it's better. I've read the comics. I think it's better than the comics.
Absolutely.
And we were talking about how the comics were all about wallowing in the degradation and the filth and the violence, and it was just going over the top all the time. And I get it, but they've actually, I think The Boys is the show is far more nuanced and subtle. If you could say that about that show. But as we were talking about the airplane scene, there's some amazing stuff going on in that show.
Yeah, the show is
and it's so well
remarkable.
cast.
And guys, if you have not started watching The Boys yet, I highly encourage you to get on board, because I right now I'm struggling with what is my favorite comic book based show on TV right now. It's either Doom Patrol or The Boys. I'm not quite sure which one yet, but they're both very different from each other. But man, I'm loving both of these shows. All right, Marie Seifring writes, I found the pair of Clint Eastwood films, Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima, fascinating. They are not only a pair of films from the same director I can think of, which present the same battle, Iwo Jima, from both sides, US and Japan. I've seen this done some within one movie, but I don't remember seeing another instance of intentionally paired separate movies. Your thoughts? No, I can't think of one either. And that was one of the things that made those two films such a almost, an albatross in some sort of ways with a lot of the fans. And both films got Oscar attention and stuff like that too. Again, showcasing what Clint Eastwood is a truly special, special director. But I am in complete agreement with you, Marie. I really can't think off the top of my head of another situation where films were approached, two separate films approached that way. I mean, you could sort of say, if you wanted to be a little bit more broad in your definition, say, well, it's just a movie and a sequel, just told from a different... But even if you wanted to do that, it's hard to quantify. Rob, I can't think of another example off the top of my head in Hollywood history that's done that. Can you?
No, but of course, in the movie Tora,
right? Yeah,
you had Kenji Fukasaku directing the Japanese segments of that Toshiro Mifune is in, but that's not two movies. It's they were showing one battle in World War II, but I think this is I actually was fascinated by both Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima. Both are. It's great to see that. It's great to see that approach to history. I wish we could see more of it.
Yeah, and it's just a unique way of doing things. I'm surprised. Well, go back to Twilight. There was talk of them doing another Twilight movie, but from the perspective, because the first Twilight movie, if I remember correctly, it's told from the perspective of Bella, the girl. The movie's told from the perspective of the girl. I believe I heard at some point they were contemplating, seriously, because I think the author was going to write a book on it, the same movie, but from the perspective of Edward. It's the same story, but instead of telling it from her perspective, telling it from his. So I guess that kind of would have been a flag. It's a weird comparison. Twilight, Flag is Our Fathers, and Letters to Iwo Jima. So sure, the exact same movies.
You brought up Twilight twice this show.
I know,
John.
that's
Is there
kind of
something
weird.
you want to tell us?
Has that ever happened? Have I ever, other than when talking about Robert, has that ever happened? I'm not sure it has. All right, great observations, Marie. Okay, next one. Nathan Oswald writes, over under 30% Blade introduction in Doctor Strange 2. 30's a low number, but here's the one thing that I think it has a possibility. Why bring out Mahershala Ali when you don't have that movie announced yet? And I do believe they're going to announce the next slate of Marvel films at D23 next month. But they weren't talking about Blade now. Why bring him up unless possibly he's going to be in one of those quote-unquote Phase 4 movies? I still think 30% is a little bit too high, and you're already got another character coming into Doctor Strange 2 with Scarlet Witch, and they've got Nightmare in it. So I'm going to it's a possibility, but I'm going to go under on that. So I'm going to go under 30%. Rob, over under 30% that we see Blade in Doctor Strange 2.
I'm going to go over.
Really?
Yeah, because, I mean, they're saying it's a balls-to-the-wall horror movie. It's funny, when the director Scott Derrickson came out and was talking about it at Comic-Con, he said, this is the first horror movie, out-and-out horror movie in the MCU. They didn't say Blade was going to be the first horror movie. So I'm thinking, whether it's an end credit sequence or something, it is called the multiverse of madness, after all. Why not bring Blade into that movie? I'd do it just to do it.
By the way, I don't believe that Doctor Strange 2 is going to be a true horror film. I suspect it's going to be the first Marvel film that will have that many horror elements in it, but I don't buy the notion that's going to be a true balls-to-the-wall horror film. At PG-13, I don't think so, Scott. I've seen some of your other horror films. But at any rate, what do you think, Kris? I mean, I'm saying under 30. Rob's saying over 30%. Over under 30% that we see Blade in Doctor Strange 2.
I would go over.
Yes, you think it's going to happen too?
Yeah, I'm leaning into the horror aspect of it. And I do think it's going to mostly be like some creature feature stuff and then jump scares. I don't think we're going to have like an It Chapter 2 situation here. But I could see him being woven into this story pretty seamlessly given that horror angle.
All right. Next up, Nick Unger writes, what do you think of Cad Bane? He's probably my favorite villain in Star Wars. Not best, but favorite. Have you watched any the Clone Wars episodes with him? Yep, I've seen all the Clone Wars, and they, if I remember correctly, they did bring him into Rebels at one point, if I'm not mistaken. They've used him in novel stuff. They've used him in the cartoon. I like the character. I do. But I'm also kind of the belief that I'm totally comfortable if we never see him again at the same time. But then again, if they used him, whatever, not as a primary character, I dig him. Yeah, I dig him. He's got a really cool look. I mean, that's one of the first thing that jumps out at you is the design of the character. He's got a really, really cool look. There's a little bit of a Boba Fett aura to him in a way, so it's a nice amalgamation. So yeah, I like him. Not one of my favorites, but I like the character, Nick. Matthew Grant writes, was exactly... You probably meant what? What exactly is a best boy in film production? Well, Aaron was on the show the other day, and they were talking about the differences between Grip and best boy. And I think Grip is like the department head guy, and best boy is, I think, somebody that works with him in electrical or something like that. Rob, am I remembering that right?
No, that's pretty good.
Yeah, so
yeah.
That's pretty much close to it. Matthew Grant follows up with, what was the #1 film before Titanic, December 1977? That's a great question.
Before Titanic, December 1977, 1997.
1990, sorry, I said 77.
It was
You did
E.T., right?
Was it E.T.?
Was it?
I think it was E.T.
I don't know. Now, I could cheat and look it up, but was it E.T.?
I think it's E.T.
Really?
Yeah.
That was the #1 box office film of all time?
I think it was.
Wow. Okay.
But now E.T. had been re-released, but I think it was. I think it was the #1.
Well, so that counts. That counts. People buying tickets to go see the movie whenever. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. It's a good question. I've never really even thought about that. Okay, next up, we're going with Matthew Denton. Have you seen Destination Wedding? Good rom-com. I believe that's the one with Keanu Reeves and
Winona.
I'm Winona Ryder. That's right. I believe that's one. I'm correct on that, right? Mm-hmm. I believe so. If that is the name of it, I did finally get around to watching it. Not while it was theatrical. It was afterwards. It was charming. It was charming. Now, I will say this, though. I heard great things about it. And while it certainly has its moments, and I overall think it was enjoyable and I liked it. I didn't think it was necessarily as great as everybody had said they had. Have either of you guys watched that one?
I have.
Okay, what did you think about it, Kris?
It's cute. But yeah, there was a lot of hype around it, and it was so exciting to see the two of them in something together. But it's okay.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, I liked it. Jem Talks writes, "Hey John, one of two. I've been watching your channel for a while now and I appreciate your content." Well, thank you so much, Jem. "I'm a younger fan of film and I'm still growing my tastes." Hey, listen, when you're 80, you'll still be growing your taste, so don't worry about it. "My favorite film is Bad Times at the El Royale. I love that movie to death and it inspired me to love and appreciate cinema. I hope that film inspires others too. What are your thoughts on it?" I really like Bad Times at the El Royale. I do. I enjoy it. Now, look, I'm going to tell you right now, Jem, it's not like amongst my favorite films of all time. But the performances in it were crazy. Jeff Bridges is wonderful in it. Dakota Fanning. Wait, not Dakota Fanning.
Johnson.
Dakota Johnson. Dakota Fanning's a very different actress. Dakota Johnson. Chris Hemsworth. I thought he's not in the movie as much as you might think he is because of the trailer, but I thought his performance was great as a Charles Manson kind of character.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed the film, and it was the first film directed by... the guy who directed Cabin in the Woods. Why am I freezing on his name?
Drew Goddard.
Drew Goddard. It was the first one that he directed since Cabin in the Woods, which is crazy because he had been attached to direct so many things between Cabin in the Woods that you just automatically assume that he had directed something since then. I liked it. Rob, what did you make of Bad Time?
You know, I didn't catch it in the theater, and I recently watched it for the first time. I didn't love it. I wanted to love it more than I did, but I enjoyed it. I again, all the characters, a great ensemble cast.
Oh, yeah. John Hamm was terrific in it.
Everybody was great in it. It was a lot of fun to watch. I wanted a little bit more from it, but that certainly doesn't take away from Jem's opinion, because if, you know, it's when people come to movies the first time, you never know where they are in their lives. I mean, I've seen so many movies. Someone just admitted to us that it put them on the road to love cinema. So we should never take away from that. I mean,
hey, good
it's
example of that.
thing.
I've got people telling me that, like, of a certain age, they're like, the Star Wars prequels are what made me fall in love with movies. And I don't like the Star Wars prequels at all. But whatever it is put you on your road to love movies, that's good to me. That's good. Did you ever see Bad Times at the El Royale, Kris?
I didn't, but my buddy Scott O'Neill is obsessed with that movie. He talks to me about it all the time. I really need to watch it.
It's got a Tarantino flavor to it. I mean, it's definitely got a Tarantino flavor to it. All right, next up, the CTB channel writes, "Hey guys, I was wondering if any of you have a favorite year for movies. Mine is 1985. So many of my favorite movies came out that year. Google 1985 movies and you'll see what I mean." I can't remember the year, Rob. But it's hard for me, even though no Star Wars movie came out that year, it's hard for me not to go with, God, which year was it? But it's the year with Pulp Fiction. I believe...
It's 94.
Is that 94? Pulp Fiction. You had several films that arguably could have won Best Picture that year. You had Shawshank Redemption, I think maybe a top 5 greatest movie of all time.
Yeah.
Shawshank Redemption. Forrest Gump came out that year. 94 was a stupidly good year for that, and that might be my favorite. What about you, Rob?
Well, I can tell you my favorite summer. My favorite summer was 1982, because from May to June, actually May through July, we had Conan the Barbarian, Star Trek II, E.T., Poltergeist, Tron, The Road Warrior, Blade Runner, John Carpenter's The Thing, all in the space of 2.5 months. And it was a mind-blowing summer. Like every week, especially from the end of May to the beginning of July, it was just insanity. And every one of these movies was something you'd never seen before. But there's been a lot of, I mean, there's probably the 1970s were my favorite era of movies. But then I've been reading a lot of think pieces about 1999. And how many great movies came out in 99.
Kris, you got a favorite particular year off the top of your head?
Off the top of my head, I can't think of a year. I know I really enjoyed all of Mel Brooks's work, and I watched it all in one big chunk, so it felt like a year to me.
Right, so that was like 1 year for you. Yeah,
that was my exploration of that.
Yeah.
But I guess those early like 1960s, 70s films of his.
Yeah, I'm not a Robert Meyer Burnett or a Scott Manson. I have movie dates is not my strong suit. Movie dates is not my strong suit. All right, Andrew Vignesh writes, Hey, John, big fan from Chennai, India. Well, thank you so much, Anju. It's always crazy how many people in India watch the show, which is always great to see. Who, in your opinion, made the better pair of Avenger films? Whedon with the Avengers and Age of Ultron, or the Russos with Infinity War and Endgame? I've had this. It's a fair question, Anju. Now, my favorite out of all those Avengers movies is the first Avengers movie. It's still, in my opinion, is the best comic book movie ever made. I still love it the most. But it's hard to compare, because you have to keep in mind that, like, what the Russos did with the incredible job they did with Infinity War and Endgame, they stood on the shoulders of Joss Whedon, because they didn't have to introduce these characters. They didn't have to establish who these characters were. They were able to brilliantly step in, and kind of take the baton, as it were, from a Joss Whedon, who did all that foundational work and set all that up, and they were able to come in and build on top of that. They didn't have to start from scratch. Now, you can make the argument that Whedon didn't have to start from scratch either, but for the most part, he established kind of what, Rob, in our podcast, Best Movie, Worst Movie, I kind of made the argument that I kind of thought that it was when we got to the Avengers that the MCU really developed its identity. Here's what the MCU is. We had Captain America First Avenger, we had Iron Man, and they all kind of, started the pace. They started off, but it was when we got to Avengers that I believe that the identity of the MCU really got established. So it's difficult to tell, because if you were to ask me, as a combined entity, are the first two Avengers movies better, or are the second two Avengers movies better? I would say, just as a combined entity, I probably enjoy the second pair as a whole better, Infinity War and Endgame overall. But again, it's like, which director did the better job? But when one set of the directors built on the work of the other director first. So it's hard for me to say, Rob, how would you address that?
I think you did a pretty good job of addressing it. I tend to agree with you, because, if you watch Captain America, the First Avenger, Iron Man, and Thor, they're pretty different movies. Even though they work together, they kind of feel different. First Avenger especially, because it has a lot more overt visual effects, and its period nature, it makes it sort of different. But watching, I wondered, could the Avengers even work? Like, they were building up to it.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if it was all going to work. Could they stick all those characters in a movie? And an hour in, I was so entranced. It was partly I couldn't believe I was watching a movie with all of the Avengers in it. I mean, I couldn't believe I was watching it, or that it was so good. Because the first 10, 20 minutes with Loki and the Tesseract, I was like, okay. But then when we got rolling, I'm like, wow, I've wanted to see this my whole life. And I'm sitting here in the theater, and I can't believe I'm watching it. So I think you're absolutely right. It really established what the MCU was, and it was really hard to do that. Whereas Infinity War, not to take away from the Russos, because going from Winter Soldier to Civil War, I mean, what they did was they took something that worked. The Marvel Cinematic Universe it already worked, so they're building on the work of all the previous filmmakers and actors, but then they took it to a place I didn't think it could go. So really, if you think about it, the Avengers and Age of Ultron were the sort of the booster rocket that lifted up our spaceship out into the stratosphere, out into outer space, and it was the Russos that are taking it to other planets.
Yeah, it's just one of the other amazing things about that first Avengers movie that, well, I'll tell you what, the moment I knew, because the movie starts, okay, and Loki comes in, he's the villain of the film, blah, blah. I'm like, all right, this is good, this is all right. The moment for me where I was just like, F this is like some of the best stuff, this movie is something special. It was the moment, that one scene that is still to this day one of my favorite scenes in the MCU, easily probably top 5, is that in the courtyard, when Loki's there and he's telling everybody to kneel. He's like, not to men like you. And Loki says, there are no men like me. And this old man with that slight defiant turn of his head and that look of disdain on his face, there are always men like you. I'm like, fuck! This is something special. This is something we haven't gotten in comic book movies ever before. This is something different. And the way that scene played out, there are always men like you. Such an effing defining line in the MCU, and it's like, okay, these movies can go here. I just loved it. And one of the other really impressive things to me, guys, about that first Avengers movie, from a movie making perspective, not even comic book moving, is going into it, Rob, I had some doubts too. I think everybody did. We all were hopeful, but we all had our doubts. Okay, so is this going to be a Captain America movie with everybody else supporting? Is this going to be an Iron Man movie with everybody else supporting? Is this going to be, we haven't had Hawkeye other than the small cameo in Thor, so is it really going to be more his movie and everybody else? Joss Whedon found a way to literally give everybody almost equal screen time, equal significance, equal importance, and spread it across the movie in such a way that you haven't seen a lot of movies been able to do with that many main characters. You get into Infinity War or Endgame, yeah, you got all these characters there, but there are a couple that are clearly the main characters and everybody else is supporting. And in Avengers, I was just walked out amazed from just a directing point of view, how he managed to make everybody equally important in that movie. And you don't see that often, not just in comic book movies, but in any kind of movie. Mm-hmm. It was really impressive. But anyway, Kris, as I've been rambling on it, sorry, I could talk Avengers all day. But, when you look at it and you look at those first two Avengers movies, second two, which director do you think does it best, the Russo brothers or Joss Whedon?
Like you guys were saying, it's so hard to make that judgment call because the other ones need the other movies to get to where they are. But I can watch the Battle of New York every goddamn day. Oh my gosh, that continued shot is so good. And that was the part for me in the movie where I was just like, oh my god, just hitting my husband, screaming at the screen because it was so good. That I think is always going to be the standout film that I'm going to keep watching over and over again. So I'm probably going to give it up to Whedon.
One of the best moments I've ever seen in a movie theater too, the first time I saw the first Avengers was with a bunch of jaded, crotchety film critics. And they were all losing their minds. And I was watching this press screening of the first press screening for Avengers. But the moment that everybody lost their minds was when, now would be a good time for you to get angry. And he says, that's the thing. I'm always angry. Turns into the Hulk mid-turn and with one punch takes out the flying space worm. One punch takes it out. That's a Hulk they've never shown us again in the MCU, by the way. But just one punch and everybody lost my. Anyway, I'm sorry, guys. I could talk about this all day. So let's move on now to the next topic. All right. Next one up comes from Toonie Tuber writes, what is more likely, Star Wars Episode 9 hits 2 billion or Star Wars Episode 9 fails to hit 1 billion? After I asked a friend, did you see the Rise of Skywalker trailer? He said, what is rice for Skywalker? Oh, probably just because they misunderstood. What is Rise of Skywalker? Okay. First of all, to be clear, Toonie, I don't think either of those scenarios are likely. I don't think I don't think Star Wars Episode 9 is going to hit 2 billion. But I just don't foresee a world in which it doesn't hit 1 billion. I just can't fathom that. So I'm going to say the more likely scenario, even though I don't think it will happen, I think the more likely scenario is that Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, hits 2 billion. Rob, which of those two things is more likely to happen? It does hit 2 billion or it fails to hit 1 billion?
Well, I think you're right. I think it's going to make over $1 billion. I think there's no... Rise of Skywalker is going to make it's not going to do Force Awakens business because that was a fluke, but I could see it going from 1.3 to 1.5 or 6 billion. I don't see it unless the movie's really disappointing, which I don't think it will be. It might not make $1 billion, but that would have to be really disappointing. But it's not going to make over 2 billion.
Kris, more likely scenario: it doesn't hit 1 billion or it does hit 2 billion.
Well, it's got steep competition. Cats comes out the same day. So, I don't know. 2 billion, too.
Yeah, I think it's fine. But again, I don't think it'll get that high. But I think
two options, though.
Yeah, out of those two options, I think that's the one that's most likely. All right, Roy L writes, yesterday I chose Real Genius. Yesterday I chose Real Genius to watch when Rocky 3 and Spaceballs were also on at the same time. What? So many choices. What would you have chosen? Oh, look, I like all those films. Love Rocky 3, any man who tries to take what I got. Anyway, I love that. I'm just envisioning Mr. T saying, hey, woman, Hey, woman. I mean,
But Real Genius is so good.
It is, but I gotta go Spaceballs.
Yeah.
It's gotta be Spaceballs. Rob, no? Real Genius is for you? Real Genius? Yeah?
Yes, because it has one of my favorite lines in any movie of all-time lines.
Which is
when Val Kilmer says, I think of the immortal words of Socrates, who said, I drank what? I love it.
Yeah.
Takes a while. You got to think about it, but it's one of my favorite lines in any movie ever.
I gotta go Spaceballs, which also has one of my favorite lines of any movie ever. Now, Lone Star, you will see that evil will always triumph because good is dumb. One of the best ones. So, which you're also Spaceballs, Kris?
Oh,
You're on that one?
absolutely, yeah.
You're on the Spaceballs train. There you go. Roy L. also writes, did you catch the premiere of Pennyworth on Epix? I don't have Epix, but I have heard nothing but good things. You know, look, I'm like everybody else. I rolled my eyes. Like, you're doing a Pennyworth movie? Really? Or a show? A show about Alfred? Really? Okay. Not all that interested, and I'm not about to subscribe to yet another service, so I haven't seen, I don't know where you get Epics or anything like that, but I'm hearing, to be fair, Roy, I'm hearing nothing but good things about it. Royale also writes, that super chat you got from that guy telling you about She's Your Queen from Coming to America, and you know when the princess is meeting Akeem. Let me try that again. She's Your Queen is from Coming to America. You know when the princess is meeting Akeem. I can't remember what the original super chat said, right? See, here's what happens sometimes. People will write in saying, hey, on a comment you addressed on a previous show, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, but I've gone through 200 or 300 other ones since then. I can't remember. You got to let me know what it is we're talking about. But anyway, thank you for the attempt at clarifying it, Roy, nonetheless. All right. Go Robot writes, since Marvel will be delving into horror territory, will there be a possibility of a Moon Knight movie? Well, I mean, that's the possibility of a Moon Knight movie has been a very popular theme around here for a while. Going back to our Heroes days, Robert Meyer Burnett. Hey, look. With them expanding more and more, trying to do more things that they haven't done before, I think the possibility for a Moon Knight movie is now higher than it's ever been. I wouldn't say it's a 70% chance that we get one in the next, 4 or 5 years, but it's a higher chance than it's ever been. Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, and look, as everyone knows, if you know Moon Knight history, Moon Knight is involved with Werewolf by Night. And Werewolf by Night is one of my favorite Marvel horror characters. And my favorite Moon Knight cover is, I think it's 29, Moon Knight 29, the original series, which is a Werewolf by Night cover. And actually, the 30th cover is great as well. So I could see Moon Knight being introduced as part of their new horror initiative. Absolutely. I think that makes sense. Blade, Moon Knight, Werewolf by Night, all those characters could exist together.
All right. Next up, Go Robot writes again, is Jar Boy a prequel to Jake Gyllenhaal's Bubble Boy? I thought you were going to say Jarhead, which obviously is a prequel to his Mysterio character. So for those of you who didn't catch it, every once in a while, I need to, somebody asks a question, I need to create up a fake movie, just as an example. So I created this movie just off the top of my head as an example for something. Say, let's say I make a movie called, I don't know, Jar Boy. And Jar Boy is about this kid who collects jars, and his room is filled with jars. But as it turns out, every jar is a jar he actually got from somebody who has a story, and the jar he gets from them tells the story of their lives. And I stopped and went, wait a minute, shit, this would actually make a pretty good movie. I should actually write this one down. Like, it's not like Jesse's dick hair or Felipe the Sentient Dancing Microphone. I mean, Jar Boy could actually get me my Oscar, man, so I got to write that down. But no.
Jesse's dick hair.
Yeah, I made one. I said, let's say you had a movie called Jesse's Dick Hair, and I listen, I make them up on the spot. Don't judge me.
It's an indie romp, a coming of age tale about pubes.
Todd Solondz, maybe.
I had to make it up on the spot, okay? Give me a break. All right. James Argento writes, over under 1.5 Force Ghosts, and ooh, that's over under 1.5 Force Ghosts in episode 9. Oh, shit. That's a good line. I'm gonna go over. I don't feel real confident about that, but I think we will see a minimum of 2 Force Ghosts. I think there's going to be some surprises. I will take over 1.5 Force Ghosts in Star Wars Episode 9. Kris, over. You're going to go over as well, Rob?
Over.
You're taking the over as well. Okay, yeah.
There's going to be a pantheon of Force Ghosts.
That's a good line, James. 1.5 line's a good line. Ryan Lohner writes, Lucifer season 5 will be 16 episodes. Seems about right. Yeah, I was really happy to hear about that because I believe Netflix, I mean, first of all, I liked it better when it was on Fox and it was like a full 20, 22 episodes. That was best. Netflix picked it up and I'm super grateful to them, so I overlooked the fact that they made the fourth season, just 10 episodes. Fine. Hey, at least you saved the thing. That's fine. We know next season is going to be the final one. And what they've done is they've tacked 6 more episodes on, or in Game of Thrones terminology, an entire on another season. They tacked 6 more episodes on, 16 episodes. Thank you, Netflix. I've always been grateful that you saved Lucifer, and you've given us 2 more seasons of Lucifer, and you've added more than you normally do. I can't remember the last Netflix show that had 16 episodes in a season. I can't think of one. I honestly can't. Every Netflix original series is like 8, 9, 10 episodes. I can't think of one. Maybe there is. I'm saying I can't think of one off the top of my head that actually had 16 episodes. Best D14 writes, is it possible Thor Love and Thunder takes place during the 5-year decimation? Otherwise, it'll be a little weird to get him off the Benatar. It's not weird to get him off the Benatar at all. Just like in one 5-second scene. Yeah, Thor Split said he had some things he had to look after when we were on whatever station. It's honestly a quick 2-second reference to an event where he said, hey, I got to split for a bit. I mean, that's really at all. It's not awkward or difficult at all. No, I don't think it happens in the 5-year decimation. I think they've made it pretty clear that everything that is coming up in this phase, other than Black Widow, takes place post-Endgame. So is it possible? Sure, but I think you're in the 3 to 5% range possibility. I think it's pretty clear it's going to be afterwards. At least that's what I interpreted from their panel. Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I know what he's saying because Thor is on the Benatar, and so we're not going to get Guardians of the Galaxy 3 before Thor.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter, I think. I mean, so Guardians of the Galaxy will take place before Love and Thunder, or maybe it doesn't.
No, they've already confirmed that Guardians of the Galaxy 3 does take place after Thor Love and Thunder.
Oh, well,
they've confirmed that.
Then there you go. I mean, yeah, he could have left and come back. I mean, yeah, we don't need to necessarily. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 could take place a year after Thor left.
Yeah.
You know, you don't. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't think it's. What do you think, Kris? Do you think it takes place during the 5-year span in between Infinity War and Endgame, or do you think it takes place after Endgame?
I think it takes place after, and it's so easy. Just have the Benatar drop him off. You don't even see the actors. He just walks off, and hey, not on that ship anymore.
Some things I need to take care of, some things I need to do. It's just easily taken care of just like that. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. Next up, Kal-El sends in a really big super chat. Thank you, Kal-El, for supporting the channel on that level, man. And Kal-El writes, greetings, John, Rob, and Kris. I love the work, by the way, it's K-R-I-S, just so everybody knows. I love the work, or K-A-T is another way you can spell it. I love the work you guys do every day. Ray, fact checker Jonathan, and Aaron as well. John, you just know how to put a Hall of Fame movie team together. You are the Jerry West. It's a sports analogy. It's a basketball sports analogy for those who don't know what he's talking about. You are the Jerry West of movie talk. Appreciate the hard work. Well, thank you so much for that, Kal-El. I really appreciate it. Now, look, one of the things that I'll say is this, is that I am not, I've often boasted that I have a face made for radio. And so I am not, I'm not the funniest guy in the world. I'm not even a funny guy, period. Funny to look at a little bit, funny to laugh at a little bit, but I'm not the funniest guy in the world. I'm not the most entertaining guy in the world, blah, blah, blah. I honestly think, and I believe this, there are certain things, just like everybody else, that I'm quite good at. And I think the thing that I'm quite good at that has had the biggest impact on my going on since I started it as a hobby, 16 years of doing this, has been, I think I'm pretty damn good. I mean, we're all pretty damn good at one or two things. And I think one of the things that I'm pretty damn good at is identifying really good people and really talented people. And knowing not just that they're talented, but knowing that identifying chemistry and identifying things like that. And I've been really honored and privileged over my career to find, identify, and work with some really exceptional people, a number of whom are far more talented than I'll ever be. But that has really been my thing. And I've seen other people, even who do it as hobbies, who, it's not the right chemistry, they don't find the right people, blah, blah, blah. But I think one of the things I'm actually quite good at is identifying really talented people. And not just talent, but good chemistry. And I continue to be incredibly lucky to come across and cross paths with people who are really super talented. And the reason you see commercials all the time for looking to find the right employee, use whatever service, like all these services that say they're trying to find you good employees, because finding good people to work with is a very, very difficult thing. And I've been so lucky to work with people like Adena Zen, or, obviously the late, great John Schnepp, and clearly a Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. And then to come across great supporting casts as well along the way, whether it's, the immortal Ashley Mova, or whether it's, people like now, today, to come across and meet somebody like a Kris Carr, to know somebody like an Aaron Cumming, to fortunately married into a family with Ray Ora, who's our graphics guy, to work with a guy like Fact Checker Jonathan. It is the thing I am best at and the thing I am luckiest for. So thank you so much for that, Kal-El. I really appreciate you sending that in and mentioning that and giving kudos to everybody. And I really appreciate that. And speaking of all that, we have all of a sudden, it's past 10:30. We've gone 90 minutes. I know, Rob, you got some things you got to run and do. Chris, you've got things you got to run and do. So we will say adieu to both of you at this point. Rob, where can the good people find you online?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at BurnettRM. Find me on Instagram at RMBurnett, or on my own YouTube channel, The Burnett Work, and its adjacent website, theburnettwork.net.
And of course, Kris Cat Carr. Chris, where can people find you online?
Oh, I just want to stay here all day and hear you say nice things about us. Oh my gosh.
It won't last. It won't last.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at actor Kris Carr. Thank you to everyone on Twitter, too, for being so nice to me. You guys are so cool. You can also find me over on Nerdwire. Tonight, I'll be live at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time talking about The Boys.
So that's where you can find those guys online. A special thanks to both of you guys for being here. And of course, we'll see Robert Meyer Burnett back here again tomorrow. And Chris will see you again on Wednesday. So guys, listen, we still got about a half hour here. So we're going to keep on rolling with your questions that you guys have sent in. Jinyu Hitchi writes, Sweet Caroline. That, what was it? Was that Saving Silverman? That they used that one really great. I think it was Saving Silverman, but they've used Sweet Caroline effectively, because you cannot. It's been scientifically proven that you cannot be in a room of people and yell the line "Sweet Caroline" without everybody else in the room going "ba ba ba." Everybody will do that. It's just scientifically. It's science. Jinyu Hitchi follows up and writes, "Crab L versus Jar Boy, Dusk of Preservatives." I like where you're going there. By the way, Crab Boy or Crab L is another one that I really like. Crab L is one that I got to get rolling on. Willow Yang writes, Jojo Rabbit trailer actually reminded me of Springtime for Hitler from the producers. It does a little bit. What's your favorite Mel Brooks movie? Well, that's clear. Look, obviously, there are a number of great Mel Brooks movies. Where are the white women at? Oh my God, so funny. But I mean, obviously for me, it's Spaceballs. He's got other great Young Frankenstein, on and on, but for me, it's Spaceballs. And the producers, by the way, the remake with the movie version they did with Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick is amazing and so funny. And you're right, that's a great example. I didn't even think of that, Willow. The trailer itself looks like it would be the trailer for the movie version that Nathan Lane and Matthew Broderick would have made. It's a great comparison to that. Well done. Mr. Hero 17 writes, rumors that Netflix Marvel's heroes will be recasted for the MCU, starting with Daredevil. Thoughts? Personally, Charlie Cox is perfect for Daredevil, but it's a different one. It's not the same Daredevil. That Netflix universe is not the MCU. It's not the MCU. And Charlie Cox was great as Daredevil. But this is the thing that film fans always do, Mr. Hero. You do it, I do it, we all do it. It's like we see somebody in the role and we think that's the only person that could play it. Well, no, there are probably other people out there who could have done it almost as well. There are probably people out there who could have done it as well. And the likelihood is that there's probably even some people out there that would have done better. We just didn't see them. We saw that guy play it, and he did a great job. But Kevin Feige has never had anything to do with the Netflix Marvel series, nor did he ever want to have anything to do with the Netflix series stuff. He's going to reboot those characters because they were never in any real way connected to the MCU. And so Kevin Feige is going to reboot those. So yeah, that's when they do bring in Daredevil and whenever they do bring in Punisher and all that kind of stuff, they're going to be recasted because they're not going to be the same characters that were in the Netflix universe. That much we know so far. But yes, Charlie Cox was great in the role. He was awesome in the role. I loved him. But that doesn't mean he's the only guy that can play it. A couple of guys played Punisher brilliantly before John Bernthal did, and John Bernthal was also brilliant, right? So they'll get somebody else who will be great as Daredevil as well. And it's okay that it won't be Charlie Cox, but tip of the hat to Charlie Cox and the way he played that Daredevil, because I thought he was great. Schnipp writes, currently rewatching all the MCU movies. Man, Iron Man 3 sucks. You know what? Here's the funny thing. I appreciate Iron Man 3 to a degree. It is one of the weaker MCU films, no doubt about it. I thought Iron Man 2 was considerably worse than Iron Man 3, though. That's just my perspective. I just found Iron Man 2 to be worse, significantly worse than Iron Man 3. And, you know, for the most part, I thought actually Iron Man 3 did some pretty interesting things. You know, I thought they focused more on the Tony Stark character instead of the Iron Man persona. I like the stuff with the kid. I like the fact of him struggling with PTSD. There's a number of things they did were really interesting, but I agree, Schnipp, it was one of the weaker of the MCU films. Of that I can agree. Jack Reacher writes, my adopted sister was loving episode 7 until Han died. She was crying and kept saying, what? Why? Is this real? Until the duel in the snow. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I think a lot of people were either A, expecting Han to die in that movie, or B, knew there was a very strong possibility that Han would die in the movie. But I could see that somebody who is not really connected to the Star Wars universe and who didn't read all the news sites and didn't know all the stuff that was going on, maybe would watch that movie and would be stunned at the death. And I could see that being very, very dramatic. But like I said, a lot of people were expecting him to die. And a lot of people actually suspect that the only reason Harrison Ford agreed to be in it is because he wanted Han to have a good death. He wanted Han to have a relevant death. And at the hands of his own son is certainly dramatically relevant. So, but I can see why it would cause some people to be surprised, Jack. That must have been a cool experience to be there with her when that happened. Chris Feldman writes, which four make your Mount Rushmore of parody films? Kentucky Fried Movie, Spinal Tap, Airplane, Top Secret, Hot Shots, Naked Gun, Spaceballs, Scary Movie. Woo! Okay. Airplane has to be on it. It just has to be. So there's one. Spaceballs has to be for me. It's my all-time favorite one. So there's that. I think Top Secret deserves to be on there. The one with Val Kilmer. I think that's got to be up there. And then for me, get Scary Movie out of there. It's okay. Scary Movie's fine, but it doesn't belong on the Mount Rushmore. I don't think Kentucky Fried Movie does either. Hot Shots. And you forgot Hot Shots Part 2. Naked Gun. I'm going to go Spinal Tap, but Spinal Tap isn't really, it's parody in a way, so maybe not. So I'm going to go Airplane, Spaceballs, Top Secret, Hot Shots. That's the four I'm going to go. But the three of them I'm very, very comfortable with. The fourth one's a little bit in question. That's a good question, Chris. I like that. Jack Reacher writes, I'm sorry I can't send more chats. No problem. Who cares, man? I'm a government social worker, and my sister's almost a cop here in Nebraska. We're working a lot, but I watch every day. No, seriously, Jack, who cares? It's, the fact that you're here talking movies with us is great. That's all we need. Thank you for being a part of the show, man. We appreciate that. And hey, my sister is a social worker, by the way. And I know that's definitely hard work. And I did some studies in social work, and I've known a lot of social workers. Definitely challenging work, man. And it's important work that you do. And obviously, if your sister's working to be in law enforcement, definitely important work. So thank you to both of you for serving your community. Seriously, I appreciate that very, very much. Chris Feldman writes, according to a Roger Ebert movie questions book I'm reading, All the President's Men and The Front were the first two PG movies to include the F word. Really? That's actually really interesting trivia. That is fascinating trivia. I never would have even thought of that. I don't, but because today a PG movie today would not allow an F-bomb. A PG-13 would. We know that, but A pure PG movie today? No way you get away with an F-bomb. No way. Dark Sith today. Love the show, guys. Keep up the amazing work. Thank you so much, Dark Sith. I appreciate that, man. Dark Sith also follows up with, hey, after hearing everyone talk so much about Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse, I finally watched it. I gotta say I was very disappointed. Hey, man, that's the subjectivity of film. Every movie will hit everybody differently. I think it is one of the greatest comic book movies ever made. I thought it was definitely one of the greatest movies of the year. I thought it should have been nominated for Best Picture. I know it won Best Animated at the Oscars, but it should have been nominated for Best Picture in my opinion, but that doesn't mean everybody's going to have the same experience. You clearly had a different one. There's nothing wrong with that, man. That's part of being a film fan. All right, Dark Sith also writes, though admittedly, I'm not a big animation guy. That might have had something to do with it. Like, I know a couple of people who are not into animation at all. Actually, I got one buddy of mine who comes over quite frequently, and he will not watch animated movies at all, period. Won't watch anything Pixar, won't watch anything, and he will not watch animated movies. He thinks they're a waste of anything that's animated is just for 7-year-olds. That's it. So I was like, oh, you have no idea what you're missing. So there's that. There's that. But hey, you know what? That might have had something to do with it, Dark, but that doesn't mean you don't need to make an excuse for why you don't like it. If you watch the movie and it just struck you a certain way that it didn't work for you, then it didn't work for you. No big deal, man. Ryan Lohner writes, I urge everyone to check out one of Russi Taylor's last roles, emo teen Donald, in the 2018 DuckTales Christmas special, eerily titled Last Christmas. Oh, that's nice. Of course, Russi's the woman who voiced Minnie Mouse for so long. And of course, we lost her recently, again, at the age of 75. What's with a couple celebrities dying the past week or so at the age of 75? Rutger Hauer passed away at 75. Russi passed away at 70. Far too young. Far too young. You know, we were sitting here watching Movie News Feed when it was playing. It's like, look at her. She's like, it's way too young. Way too young. Anyway, Kris, thanks for sharing that, Ryan. Chris Feldman writes, when Warner and NBC streaming services take back Friends and The Office from Netflix, will those shows also leave channels like TBS and Comedy Central? That's a very good question. I'm going to guess yes. Now, it all depends on what the pre-existing contracts are with those other networks and how long they're allowed to carry those shows. But if they don't get pulled immediately off those things, my suspicion will be that, you know, Warner and Universal will not renew those things. And at some point, the Warner streaming and the NBC streaming will become the exclusive places that you can go and watch those shows. And why not? If that was your property and that's one of your biggest aces in the hole, of course you play that card. Make it exclusive to your service. It's your property. Make it exclusive to your service. I have a feeling that's the way it's going to be. I don't know that for a fact. Let's be clear. I don't know that for a fact, but I can't see why they wouldn't do that. Sinfinity and Beyond writes, I know you're a big Russell Crowe fan. I am. Have you been watching The Loudest Voice? Crowe is a lock for Best Acting Emmy. You got to see this, John. I know nothing about it. I know nothing about it. I've never even heard of The Loudest Voice. And Russell Crowe's my all-time favorite actor. I've never even heard of The Loudest Voice. What's it on? What's the channel? Somebody email me at john@thejohncampeashow.com. john@thejohncampeashow.com. Somebody email me and tell me where the hell I find this, because I don't even know about it, Sinfinity. You're putting this on my radar for the first time. All right, thank you for that. Again, I'm a guy who doesn't watch a lot of television. All right, Jonathan Teft writes, holy crap, Aladdin's made $1 billion. Can we all agree that this is the big surprise hit of 2019? This is about as surprising as Venom last year. Well, here's what I would say is the difference, though, Jonathan, between the different situations, between Aladdin's situation and Venom, was that when they first announced Aladdin, when they first announced it, I think everybody knew this could be big. It wasn't until the first trailer, or it wasn't until they cast Will Smith and that got some people grumbling, and then they played the first trailer or two and that got some people grumbling. It wasn't until then that everybody changed their expectations for the movie to much lower. But when they first announced Aladdin, before there was any casting, before anything like that, when they first announced, when I think a lot of people thought this could be very big. When Venom got announced, it was, oh, this is going to be a disaster. No one's going to watch a movie about Venom without Spider-Man in it. This movie can't work without Spider-Man. There's no point in doing this movie. No one's going to watch this. Now, I knew it could be a success. I suspected it would be a success, but I didn't think it would make $800 million. I mean, that was huge. So because of what the initial expectations were from people, I would say Venom was the bigger surprise. If we talk about, after the trailers for Venom came out, people got more excited. When the Will Smith announcement and Mina Massoud was announced as the lead as Aladdin, and we saw the first trailer that just got everybody grumbling, then the expectations were seriously lowered. So it did end up being a big surprise hit, but initially, I think the Venom thing ends up being the bigger surprise hit. But yeah, $1 billion for Aladdin, ladies and gentlemen. And I think that movie's delightful. I have a great time with it. Jonathan Teft follows up and writes, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is the first Tarantino film I've ever seen. Really? I really enjoyed it, but I wish it had a stronger plot. Me too. And was better paced. I agree. It's poorly paced. What Tarantino movie should I watch next? I would go Inglourious Bastards. Inglourious Bastards or Django Unchained. Those should be your next two, I think, and you can't go wrong with either of them. And then start getting more into his filmography after that. But I would suggest either Inglourious Bastards or Django Unchained. I think they're both significantly better than Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And I like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I like it. But I think both of those movies are significantly better. So go from there and then dig into the filmography of Quentin Tarantino. I think you'll be very, very happy, Jonathan. All right. Tortellini at Noon writes, do you think there would have been a difference with the MCU if Disney had never bought Marvel and it stayed at Paramount? Well, remember this. Marvel was never at Paramount, okay? Just remember that. Marvel was never at Paramount. Paramount had the distribution rights to a number of Marvel properties, but Marvel was never at Paramount. Paramount was never, behind the productions of the things that Marvel was doing. They just sold off a bunch of their distribution rights. Disney actually owns Marvel. So would there have been a difference? So just take Paramount out of the equation. Would there have been a difference with the MCU if Disney had never bought it? Yes, there would have been a difference. Could they have still succeeded? Of course they could have still succeeded. But yes, it would have been different. Like when you suddenly now get the huge infrastructure, the resources, the creativity, all the stuff that's available, the oversight that Disney brought to the table to empower Kevin Feige and all that kind of stuff while giving him oversight at the same time and working with Bob Iger absolutely would have been different. It definitely would have been different. David Sickles writes, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was great. The first two acts were especially brilliant, reminding me of Turoff's classic Day for Night. Ironically, for a nearly 3-hour movie, the third act felt very rushed. Although that signature Tarantino flavor made it totally worth it. DiCaprio was amazing. 4.3 out of 5. Yeah, I didn't like it as much as you did, but I still enjoyed it. I thought pacing for the whole movie felt like a wreck. I don't think the final act felt rushed, David, to be honest with you. If anything, I think because the first two acts were so poorly paced that when you get into a proper pace in the third act, it almost feels rushed by comparison. But the performances were fantastic. I thought there were a number of really magical scenes. The ending is incredible. It's a worthy movie. I enjoyed it. Not as much as you, but I did enjoy it. Murray Reich writes, have you ever seen the pitch meeting videos by Screen Rant on YouTube, basically poking fun at movie scripts? They're really hilarious. I have. Here's the problem, and I've mentioned this before. Hold on a second. Let me see if, because I'm freezing on the name here. Let's see. Hold on a second. Ray. Hold on a second. Because I want to get this name right. Let me see if I can find this. I can't. Why am I forgetting the name of the girl? Anyway. The whole Screen Rant pitch meeting thing, I hope they paid this girl for it. But this, and you're right, they're very funny, but they are a blatant ripoff. They blatantly ripped off. I want to say her name's Jenny. I'm trying to remember the girl's name. I wish I remembered because she was in a Star Wars movie trivia thing at Star Wars Celebration with me, and I'm embarrassed I'm forgetting her name. But she made this one of a pitch meeting for Star Wars The Force Awakens. And it was her talking to herself as playing both characters in this quick, snappy back and forth. And as much as I do like the Screen Rant ones are very good. Jenny Nicholson, it was M.E. in the live chat, reminded me it was Jenny Nicholson. Thank you. It was Jenny Nicholson. They blatantly, I mean shamelessly, format, content, and everything. They just ripped off Jenny Nicholson. They just completely ripped it off from her. That whole thing. Now they do them very well, but it is a shameless ripoff of what they did and of what she did. And all I can hope is that they paid her something. Because I remember, this is a true story, going back to the last place that I worked, we were starting to look at putting together some original comedy sketches, things like that. And I thought something like this pitch meeting idea that Jenny Nicholson did would be a great idea to do. This is before Screen Rant. I thought this pitch meeting idea that Jenny Nicholson has done is a great thing to do. But I said, we're not doing it unless I can hire Jenny to work with us. Because she's the one who created this thing. If someone's going to make money off this, and so, she should at least get a paycheck for it if we're going to do this. And so I started talking. I had a couple of quick correspondence with Jenny. Now, our budget was tight, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to offer her the world to come and work with us. But I reached out to Jenny, and she and I exchanged some information back and forth a bit. And I told her I was interested in discussing maybe bringing her on staff and bring her on board, because I thought that was the right thing to do. I mean, I'm not just going to go and lift her idea for this pitch meeting thing. I think if we're going to do that, we should hire her and put her on staff. And, you know, we weren't able to come to an agreement, which is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And then a while later, Screen Rant starts doing their things. Now, look, I'm not saying Screen Rant. Don't get me wrong. I read Screen Rant. I'm not throwing Screen Rant under the bus here. I'm not attacking Screen Rant, blah, blah, blah. I'm just saying in this one isolated incident, while they do a great job of that, in my opinion, it really, really was a blatant ripoff of what she did. And I kind of felt like, I hope they've paid her for that. I mean, they legally might not be required to, but I hope ethically they paid her something for that, because that was her thing. And I just didn't feel comfortable doing it unless we hired her, and we couldn't hire her, so we didn't do that thing. It was just that simple. So I don't know, but you know, whenever you watch those, and again, I got to give credit where it's due. They do a good job with those. They really do. And the guy who hosts it does a very, very good job. And I don't know who he is, but he does a very good job. But it is a blatant ripoff of Jenny and what she did. Anyway, so that's just kind of my thing on that. All right, Micah T writes, John, did you get around to watching The Boys? My friend said he loved it, and I should check out Interested in Your Opinion if you watch it. I did. I've been talking about The Boys ever since last week. I binged the entire first season in one day. I got the hiccup. Sorry, guys. I started watching it after finishing the John Campea Show, and at like noon, and I watched right through, only breaking for bathrooms, meals, and to hang out with my wife a little bit, but I binged the entire first season in one day, ended at 2 a.m. Loved it. I absolutely loved it. I cannot wait for season 2. I'm very excited about it. Cannot wait for season 2. Okay, here. What's next? We are at Isaac S. And Isaac S. writes, yesterday you said you can debate whether Detective Pikachu is a video game movie. Why wouldn't it be? It's based on a game, so is the original show. Okay, so we've covered this topic 1,000 times, Isaac. What I said, and I still stand by it, is that technically speaking, yes, it is a video game movie. Technically. However, most people do not think, when you ask the average person on the street, you know, what's the origin of Pokemon? They don't say a video game. They think it's a collector card game or a cartoon. They see that as being the origin. So it's partly its perception. But the other thing is the game had the movie had no resemblance to the game whatsoever. None. So if you had just called that movie Pikachu, nobody would have associated it with Detective Pikachu. It had nothing to do with the game whatsoever. So while I have said from the beginning that yes, I cannot debate you if you say technically yes, it's a video game movie. I don't deny that. But I just think in every practical term, it's not really. But it technically is, and I won't argue on that, but I think the other things mean something. Anyway, we've been having that argument for months. Jesse Lopez writes, since this year is the game's 10th anniversary, do you guys have a favorite Batman Arkham game? Not off the top of my head. I mean, honestly, most of them to me, because I'm not a hardcore platform gamer or anything like that, so most of them just become a blur to me, and I couldn't even tell you which one is which. But they have become incredibly influential. The fact that we're coming up on the 10th anniversary is significant, Jesse, for sure. Anthony Cullen writes, Iron Man 3, I can't sleep. I hope I can protect the one thing that I can't live without. Endgame, Tony, we're okay. We're going to be okay. You can rest now. Another sign of the brilliance of how they put everything together in the MCU. You know, taking things that other directors did, building on top of that in a brilliant way. That's just what the MCU has done, man. And that one example, Anthony, and that's a very good example you pulled out of the hat there. I like that one. That one example there is a great kind of representation of how well the MCU has been able to do that constantly throughout the entire run of their movies. So great one to pull out there, Anthony. I like that one. Timothy Platt writes, not proud of this, but I finally saw Bill and Ted for the first time. Most excellent indeed. Well, listen, nothing to be ashamed about, Timothy. It's an older film. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure is an older film. And I bet you there's a number of people watching this show right now that have not gotten around, haven't had a chance to get around to watching that, for them, an older film at this point. So don't feel bad about that. I'm impressed that having not seen it, you did take the time to go back and watch it. And it is truly excellent. I'm not thrilled about the second Bill and Ted, to be honest with you, but that first one is a classic. Daz Che writes, no spoilers. John, did you catch the Michael Jackson Smooth Criminal reference in The Boys? It's short and one line and probably not intentional, but LOL. If I did see it, I don't remember it. If I did catch it, I don't remember it at all, unfortunately. Now, again, I've only seen the show once. I watched it all in one single day. So no, I did not catch the Smooth. And if I did catch it, I've since forgotten about it because everything else kept rolling, Daz. Good question, though. Murray Reich writes, do you think Toy Story 4 will surpass the third movie record? It's at 917 million right now. If you're talking about the third Toy Story made, if I remember right, like $1.066 billion or something like that. So it's got about $150 million to go. I'll guess no. I think it will hit $1 billion, but that might be the ceiling for it. It's a good question. For now, I'm going to guess no, but it's certainly within reach. It's certainly within reach, Murray. So let's see how that all transpires. Because remember, it's still got a couple of not huge markets, but it does have a couple of markets to still open in. Let's see how it does. Buddy Biggs writes, just saw Lion King last night. I really liked it, but boy, I miss Jeremy Irons' Scar. Something about that man's voice is hard to replace. True, but I gotta tell you, I love Chiwetel Ejiofor as the voice. I really did. I think, the more I reflect on it, I think Jeremy Irons' voice is better for a cartoon animated Scar where he can be villainous, like it just something about his voice fit that a little bit better. For this Scar, I think Chiwetel Ejiofor did a great job. I really do. And I thought it was worthy of the Scar character that Jeremy Iron gave us. I thought it was a really good replacement. I really do. I'm not saying one's better than the other. I'm just saying I thought for this particular style, this realism style, I thought maybe Chiwetel's voice even did a little bit better for this style, just as Jeremy Irons' voice was better for that style. So that's kind of how I see it. All right, Jared Graff writes, hey, John, I can't help but find a bit ironic that your favorite Spider-Man movie is Into the Spider-Verse. Granted, the multiverse was used a key aspect to the story, but I can't help but chuckle at the thought. Well, we've actually talked about this before. And yeah, I've brought that up. I've said, it's funny that Into the Spider-Verse is the best Spider-Man movie ever, one of the best comic book movies ever, but it involves multiverse. And I think the big difference is, the thing I don't like about multiverse in a lot of storytelling is that it's used as a cheap lazy way to do things that they can't think of ways to do otherwise. But that character's dead. Oh, we'll just say we brought back that character from an alternate multiverse dimension. Okay. Like Loki or Gamora. It's just lazy, lazy, lazy. In Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, they treat it like each piece of the multiverse is a radically different universe. It's like, oh no, I'm Miles Morales, and I have to be over there fighting crime. But I'm also supposed to be in my third period history class. What do? I know. Just go to a random multiverse and pull my Miles Morales duplicate in that multiverse and bring them over here because we're all the same. That's the part I don't like. What Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse did was make it so one is a 1920s noir world. One is a futuristic New York City where Spider-Man is actually a young Japanese girl in a robotic exoskeleton suit. One did it where it's a world of animals and a pig is Spider-Man. One is where a girl, Gwen Stacy, is a Spider-Man. One that even has a Peter Parker is a different Peter Parker. Like, he even looks different and all, even that's Peter Parker, and that's the closest one. And it didn't use multiverse as a lazy way to tell story hooks that they couldn't find more creative ways to do it without multiverse stuff. Whereas in Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse, it was just radically, completely different universes with completely different characters and that made it more palatable to me. As again, in contrast to the way the MCU uses multiverse so far. But we'll see. But hey, Jared, and by the way, it's a very generous super chat. Thanks for sending that in. But believe me, I've brought that up myself and it's made me wonder myself. It's like, why? I hate multiverse. Why do I like it in Spider-Verse? Like, I've wondered that myself. And that to me is the answer at that point. But hey, let's see how, they handle it in the MCU moving forward. Let's see how Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse sequel handles it moving forward. Maybe I'll change my mind on both. Calvin Black Deer writes, never rat on your friends and always keep your mouth shut. Good fellas. Robert De Niro talking to the young Ray Liotta character. Ray Liotta. I almost said Ray Liotta. Ray Liotta character after his first court case. Yeah, you got, what do they call it? You got snapped? No, you got pinched? Is that it? You got pinched, but everybody gets pinched. But you handed something like a champ. You kept your mouth shut. Like, great scene. Aaron Kin writes, I really like The Boys on Amazon. I do feel like some of the messages are heavy-handed. I didn't read the comics, so maybe I'm wrong. I'll be honest with you, Aaron. When I think about The Boys, I don't really think about any message, to be honest with you. I don't think of any level of messaging, per se, in the show. So I didn't really think of it on that level. Maybe if I reflect on it a little bit more, Aaron, maybe I'll think the same way. But I wasn't really picking up on any really perceived messages in the show. But maybe that's just because I was wrapped up in the humor and the characters and all that kind of stuff. And maybe there's more underlying messages that are a little bit heavy-handed. I'll have to go back because I do plan on watching it again. I don't often go back. Hell, I hardly ever go back and watch an entire season of television a second time. But I do plan on doing it with The Boys. I'm going to keep an eye open for that, Aaron. Thanks for putting that on my radar, man. All right. James Hoffman writes, I am seeing criticism that Lion King lacks heart and soul. I've seen it twice now, and I loved it. I thought the story will pack a lot of heart. I agree. I honestly completely disagree, and that's okay. We're allowed to all be film fans together and have disagreements over what worked and what didn't work in a movie. But I agree with you, James. I don't know what those people are talking about. That they say that the live action version lacked heart and soul. To me, that's BS. I mean, I respect that they watched the movie and it just lacked that for them. I respect that. But from my perspective, now granted, I've only watched it twice, but sitting in the movie theater twice and watching it, I cried in that movie. I haven't cried outright bawled and cried in a movie in years. Years and years and years and years. Don't tell me that movie didn't have heart and soul. It had heart and soul. To me. Again, so yeah, that's just one of those things that as film fans, we got to agree to disagree on, I suppose, James. So you and I are on the same side as that. Cinema Survey, Troy writes, over under 30%, Doctor Strange 2 brings back Quicksilver. I think there's a chance, but not as high as 30%. I would probably guess closer to around 15, so I'm going to take the under on 30%. But I still think there's a possibility they do that because it is the Marvel's fake death universe. Everybody gets brought back. So I have no doubt that there's a strong possibility they could do with Doctor Strange 2 with Quicksilver, but I will take under the 30 on that. Dominic Francis writes, very late, but watched Game Night, Overlord, and Happy Death Day. I like all those movies. Enjoyed all of them. Jesse Plemons was amazing, and the plane scene in Overlord was so intense. Jesse Plemons in Game Night. First of all, Game Night, to me, was probably comedy of the year. That was probably the movie that made me laugh the most that year. I really enjoyed Game Night. And Jesse Plemons in that was amazing. But they were all good, right? Rachel McAdams was good. Jason Bateman was good. The whole cast was great. I liked it very much. Overlord was surprisingly fun. I enjoyed that movie a lot. And yeah, the plane scene. And that's just how the movie starts. Boom. Movie starts. Plane scene. And already you're clenching your butt cheeks. Like, ah! Like, it was so well. And Happy Death Day, one of my most pleasant surprise horror movies ever. I'm not saying it's one of the best horror movies ever, but one of the most pleasant surprise movies. I enjoyed that one so much. That's a nice triple feature, Dominic. That's a really nice triple feature. Stuart Hagen writes, you look possessed talking about ice cream yesterday. Dude, when I get started, I'm telling you what, ice cream is my heroin. People get addicted to gambling. They get addicted to porn. They get addicted to drugs. They get addicted to alcohol. They get addicted to cigarettes. I think I got an ice cream addiction. Now, I've cut myself back to maybe having ice cream once, sometimes twice a week. I'll have some ice cream. But I'll tell you what, without exaggeration, there was a day that I was having ice cream 5-6 days a week. And if you told me that ice cream was made out of broccoli and had positive health benefits, I would be eating ice cream every day. Hell, every meal, I would have ice cream. I am so addicted to ice cream. I freaking love ice cream. It's unhealthy. That's why I cut back so much. The Insight writes, watch The Boys, loved it. Dude, I loved it too. I'm glad you enjoyed it, my friend. Let's see. Ronaldo Crisotto writes, Irishman has a $200 million budget. That's insane, I know, especially one that's going direct to Netflix. And again, ever since they announced this film, I've had some worries about it, Ronaldo. I've had some worries about it. Now, maybe it'll be awesome. Maybe it'll be the best thing ever. We'll have to see. But I have my concerns about Irishman. We're getting closer. Fingers crossed, man. I mean, look, it is Al Pacino and Robert De Niro being directed by the great Martin Scorsese. And of course. But the fact that everybody else passed on it before Netflix, it makes me worried. So let's see. Let's see how it turns out. David Barger writes, what do you think of The Boys? I love it. Again, I've been talking about it a lot, David. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I was hooked in it from the first episode. I thought it was great. I cannot wait for season 2. Nathan Chapa writes, I started a movie review blog because of you. That's awesome, Nathan. I think more people need to do that. More fans in the community. Who cares if 2 people read it? Who cares if 20 people read it? Who cares if 200 people read it? It doesn't matter. The important thing is being a part of the film fan community, engaging that creative side of yourself for just doing it, and contributing, even if you're only contributing to 2 other people, 20 other people, or 200 other people. You're contributing to the film fan community in a way. I think more people need to get involved in that, and good on you, Nathan, for getting involved in doing that. I applaud you, sir. All right, Ben Rayner writes, Travis Knight for Venom 2. He did Bumblebee, Girl and a Dog, and the best parts of Venom was Eddie and Venom. Let him develop that relationship. Hey, look, no doubt. No doubt. Look, I still lean towards Andy Serkis just for his sensibilities, but Travis Knight, he's 2 for 2 with his movies. He did a great job with Kubo and the Two Strings. He did a fabulous job bringing heart and emotion and character to a robot, to Bumblebee, in a movie that I thought was a bad idea to start. And he made it and made it well and made it entertaining. And yeah, I lean Andy Serkis, but if they were to announce Travis Knight, I'd be thrilled. If they were to announce, Rupert Wyatt, I'd be thrilled. I mean, this is a no-lose situation. Any one of these 3 guys, I think, will do a great job with the Venom 2. I really do. Jabin, a little bit of a jump here. Where are we at? Jabin Carter writes, and we only got a few minutes left here, guys. Jabin Carter writes, if there's anyone who can handle a character with split personality issues, it's Andy Serkis. That's part of the reason, Jabin, why I was saying I like the sensibilities that Andy Serkis could bring. And I think he could do a great job with that. I really do. But then again, I think Travis Knight could do a great job with it as well. And so could Rupert Wyatt, and a number of other directors could do a good job, but I'd be thrilled with any of them, but I think I'd be particularly thrilled if they happen to announce Andy Serkis, but I'm down for any of these guys, man. I'm down for any of them. That's a great observation. Santiago Villa writes, so MCU, talking only domestic adjusted and leaving international as it is, has a worldwide average of $1 billion per movie. Damn, yeah. Like 23 movies now into the MCU, and it's just about at $23 billion. Close. It's ridiculous, is what it is. It's just stupid. This level of success is nutty, and Rob brings that up all of the time, Santiago, and it's true. It's so unreal that it's hard to even think about it. Like Bond has one movie in the $1 billion club. You think of the long celebrated success of James Bond, one film in the $1 billion club. The DCEU, with they have some financial successes, some good financial successes, but only one film in the $1 billion club. The MCU is averaging $1 billion. Not all of them do, but when you average it out, it's just nuts. It's nuts. Heston Roberts writes, over under 35%, Disney hits $10 billion. I'm going to go over 35%. I wouldn't say 70% it does, but it's at 7.6 right now. I believe Frozen's going to go over $1 billion. I believe Star Wars is going to go over $1 billion. And then Maleficent is going to bring in $500 million or more. Yeah, I'm going to go over 35% that it hits $10 billion. Which just is, again, shatters the record into a million pieces. Dominic J. Gomez writes, Moon Knight better than Batman. Well, okay. Sentry better than super overpowered man. I disagree with you on both, but I think it's great that you're looking at those characters. And again, just like any other form of art, comic books and the characters in them are all subjective. Those ones work for you better. So that's awesome. I look at it differently. But that's what makes being in the same film fan community so much fun. All right, Cyberwolf. And this will be the last question that we take today, guys. Cyberwolf74 writes, Marvel likes to one-up DC films. For example, The Eternals versus The New Gods. What are the chances of the Sentry film to one-up the next Superman film? I honestly, Cyber, I'll be honest with you. I really don't think there's anything to that. I don't think there's anything to... Marvel's trying to one-up DC. They don't need to. They don't need to. Marvel doesn't care what DC is doing. They don't care. They're focused on their movies and doing the things they think will work. Doing The Eternals is not a response to DC possibly doing a New Gods. By the way, I don't think that movie's going to happen. I mean, it very well could. I mean, they've got Ava DuVernay on it. They've got a writer. They're writing the script. All that. I get it. I still don't think it'll happen, but it most likely will. I just don't think maybe it will. But anyway, I do not think in any universe that Marvel is making their decisions based on what DC's doing. They don't care what DC's doing, nor does DC care what Marvel's doing. Marvel is going to make the movies they think is best for them to make at that particular time in that particular moment. So I really don't think at all. I mean, I know it's fun to put on the conspiracy theory hat. I put it on quite a bit, but no, I don't think there's anything there to that at all. And could we get a Sentry at some point? I mean, it's possible we get a Sentry at some point, but it has nothing to do with them doing Superman. If that were the case, they would have made Sentry the first character they ever did, because Superman's been around forever. Superman movies have been around forever, right? So if they do a Sentry at some point, it'll have nothing to do with Superman. I really don't think it'll have anything to do as Superman. And I'll just take one more here because it's an easy answer. Dominic J. Gomez writes, how do you feel about Norman Reedus as Ghost Rider? I really don't care. What do you think about X actor and X role? All I care about when you ever propose an actor for an role, all I care about is it a good actor? If it's a good actor, then I'm all for it. I'd be all for Norman Reedus as Ghost Rider. But I'll also be all for probably about 100 or 200 other actors as Ghost Rider too, just to be clear on that. All right. Guys, we've gone over 2 hours and 15 minutes here. So from all the remaining question guys, from Coolsome XD, Hanging with Mr. Harris, Jack Zen, Jose Juan Aguilar, and all the way down, everybody else who has sent in a live question here for today's show, don't worry, your questions are getting answered today in a big companion video that I got to put up today because we never got around to doing companion videos for Thursday and Friday because of circumstances that we talked about on the weekend. So I'm going to take all the leftover questions from Thursday. There weren't many. And then all the leftovers from Friday. I couldn't do one Friday because I was binge watching The Boys. And I'm going to add them to these questions that are left here. And we're going to do one big companion video today. So guys, all the rest of you who we didn't have time to get to your questions are getting answered in a video today. Keep your eyes open for that. All right, guys. That will do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for being here, guys. It's always fun to start off a new week with my film fan community and also to start off with Robert Meyer Burnett, Kris Carr. So special thank you to those guys for being here. Special thank you to all of you. Those of you who are my Patreon supporters, thank you for being Patreon supporters. Those of you who sent in super chats, you gave us great topics to talk about on the show and you supported the channel along the same way. So I thank you for that. Guys, don't forget a little bit later, companion videos coming and then the John Campea Show returns again tomorrow morning. It's going to be me, the great Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett, and the wonderful Aaron Cummings will be here tomorrow talking about stuff. And then I'm going to go watch Hobbs and Shaw tomorrow night. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Anyway, guys, thanks a lot for being here. My name's John Campea, and until our next episode, bye-bye.